This meeting of the Margate Planning Board for Thursday, October 26, 2023 is called to order. Please stand for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Tom Collins.
Here.
Craig Palmisano.
Here.
Richard Patterson.
Here.
John Pitts.
Here.
Michael Cristaldi.
Here.
Jim Galantino.
Here.
Margaret Gubernalti. Here. Remy Pelosi. Stephen Giesecke.
Here.
Michael Ruffview.
Here.
Andrew Campbell.
Here.
Michael Richmond.
Here. This meeting is being held in accordance with due public notice thereof and pursuant to the New Jersey State Sunshine Law. Notice of this meeting was advertised in the press, and a copy of same has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. All applicants are hereby advised that should you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form which informs you regarding the timing of receiving building permits and mercantile licenses. At the end of your case tonight, please see the board administrator to sign the two information sheets. I'd like to hear a motion for the approval of minutes for the meeting of September 28th, 2023.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I'd like to hear a motion for approval of decisions and resolutions number 39, 2023, Neil and Karen Cohen, number 40, 2023, Beach Walk Condominium Association, number 41, 2023, Timothy and Rita Gosner, and number 42, 2023, John and Luann Amadeo.
I'll make a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Goldstein?
As he's coming up, I'll get Mr. McLaren sworn in. Mr. McLaren, do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give throughout this evening will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Goldstein, before we get started on your case, I have some comments to make. And I'm interrupting now because there's similar issues with this case and one decided last month. And I actually think my comments are going to take longer than your case. I want to stress that I have no problems with this case. I think this case your first case, is the perfect case for the planning board. No pools are permitted in the front yard. That applies to everybody in town. A variance should be for a unique situation for a property. Technically, this property has two front yards because there's the nub of a street end behind the house. It'd be totally unfair to hold the applicant to the letter of the law. That's what this planning board is charged with doing, recognizing that the master plan should not apply in this particular case, and it would be unfair to penalize the applicant. This application has an 18-foot driveway. It's not a variance because the application was submitted before the law changed. But by taking away half of a parking space from the public, a half space is left on the street, effectively losing a whole space. Along with the ruling in last month's case next door, we've now lost two public spaces on the street. You argued that the applicant was doing a service to the city by getting more cars off the street. We do require a certain amount of on-site parking and applaud the fact that the required spaces were now off-street. But because Margate is over 90% impervious, it's of utmost importance to this board that we also require a minimum amount of vegetation. In listening to the tape at last month's meeting, Mr. Palmisano was chastised when he questioned the curb cut because it did not require a variance. It absolutely required a variance. If the variance for the lack of landscaping in the front yard was not approved, there would be no room for the extra wide curb cut. So effectively, a public parking spot was converted to a spot solely for the use of the applicant, and the grass was paved over for a parking lot. Using your logic, we should pave over more green space to get even more off-street parking. In this regard, I believe the board needs a member with a green background that would be given the guidance to be mindful of destroying green space and not be distracted by an overzealous architect saying he's putting Sherwood Forest in a backyard the size of a postage stamp. I want to go over how and why we changed the curb cut rules. Since Sandy, too many applicants were ignoring street parking in their designs, such as putting entrances in the middle of the home and a driveway on each side of the stairs. This has been a matter of discussion on the board for quite some time. After considering the board's input, Mr. McLaurin proposed the rule changes. The board had ample time to review these changes before voting on them. Mr. Palmisano reviewed the changes and saw that any lot under 50 feet could only have one 10-foot curb cut. The board's intention was 40 feet. He brought it up and it was corrected. No other board member, after reviewing the changes, had any objections, and the rules were adopted unanimously. So even if a board member now disagrees, their duty as a board member is to follow the new rules unless there's a unique problem for an applicant calling for a variance. For instance, I have lived in Margate for 73 years. The streets have not become narrower. Since the mid-60s, this town has been jammed in the summer, and parking is at a premium. So if an applicant wants a wider driveway because the street is narrow, and in these two cases, the driveway was more than 50% of the property's width, this is not a unique situation. Every other house in the city is coping with the same situation. It's not our duty as board members to pick and choose among applicants who can't handle this situation when everybody else in town abides by the rules. And by the way, Mr. McLaurin, in between everything else he has to do, is looking into several streets in town that are extremely narrow, so they should be allowed to have a wider curb cut. We are working on those streets. In the same vein as a narrow street issue, this board consistently hears from applicants' attorneys that a variance should be approved because the new house is flood compliant. Of course it's flood compliant. It's the law. And I fail to believe that if an applicant is lifting or rehabbing an existing property and we turn down a particular variance, that they're going to leave the house non-flood compliant. It's an empty threat and not a reason to approve. When I was first appointed as board chairman, my first act was to recommend getting rid of the Design Review Committee, which oversaw the redevelopment of the western end of our city. Their mission was successful, but at that end of the city is now redeveloped, and there was no longer any need to tell applicants what color their siding should be or what design their house should be. This last part was really addressed to the 4 new board members as far as how we do things. Let me make up some hypothetical examples. You're not upholding your duty to see that the projects are conforming to the intent of the master plan if you approve an application because, quote, that cottage is gorgeous, or that house is so spectacular that it calls for a variance. That would indicate to the public that if in your opinion you didn't think the cottage was gorgeous, or you didn't think the house was to your taste, you would turn the variance down. What if the next door neighbor was turned down for the exact same variance because you didn't see it as spectacular? It's important and it's fair to the applicants that our decisions be more consistent. Your job as a new board member is not to base your decision on the appearance of a house, but to see that the project conforms to the intent of the master plan unless that project has a unique situation, such as our first case tonight, and it's not strictly for the benefit of the applicant. With that in mind, Mr. Goldstein, I will start your case.
I have a question.
Yes.
So,
Microphone.
oh, sorry. So the case we're talking about last month, had an 18-foot curb cut,
Yes,
and was that a variance?
yes. It was a variance. The variance was for the front yard landscape coverage.
But not for the 18-foot curb cut?
But if they didn't give
I
the
know what you're
variance.
saying, but I
yes.
just want to make sure, because it was a month ago, but Roger, was the curb cut a variance, the 18-foot?
No.
No.
The grass
I
was a
understand.
variance.
Right, right.
And
I
that
get
was ignored, which allowed the 18-foot driveway.
it. Right.
Yeah, I would.
And I think that since the Margate's 90 to 95% impervious, and we've been talking about this for years, this board has got to be concerned with as much open area as we can. And we basically paved over the
I don't disagree
grass.
with that, but I just want to make sure that I understand.
Oh, no,
because I
I'm
was
so-
the
I
one
see
who
what
was
you're
saying
saying.
last month that it's not a variance, and it wasn't a variance.
But they needed a variance to get it. They needed a variance for the grass to get that driveway.
Okay, I understand that. Yeah, but I don't think it's inappropriate.
I
wanna
checked
make
with
sure
Leo
that-
beforehand, and it is appropriate.
Actually influencing the board in public on the record
Yes.
before we started.
Well,
Yes.
the board's charged with making its own independent decision. You should think how you will. I don't have a problem with the chairman making a statement. I would say, as it goes to aesthetics, oftentimes we'll get a corner property and we'll make it look like two fronts. That's something often the board likes. We got a dilapidated structure and you say, look what's there now, look what we're putting. Those aesthetics isn't completely out the window. I think to his point is,
I didn't mean.
I
to
like
do
this
that.
or I don't like this, the way it looks. You get into a little bit, but
First case, Jeffrey and Fern Llewellyn, 16 North Exeter Avenue, Block 207.01, Lot 45, located in the S25 zoning district, seeking C variance relief for minimum lot width, pool location, and possibly others in order to construct a new single-family home. Taxes and water payment are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Mr. McLarnon, you've been sworn in, correct?
Chairman,
Okay.
Chairman, Remy Pelosi's now in attendance.
okay.
Remy's now here.
We haven't started anything, so she's present.
All right, let me get started. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. The application of Jeffrey and Fern Llewellyn, 16 North Exeter Avenue, Block 207.01, Lot 11, located in the S25 zoning district. FEMA Zone AE Elevation 9, seeking C variances. So this is the Planning, Zoning, and Engineering report. Deemed complete. This is both a hardship variance case and a substantial benefit variance case. The background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate to construct a new flood-compliant single-family home within the S25 zoning district. The property has two front yards by definition on opposite ends of the property, adjoining two side yards, creating a hardship by having to comply with different front yard setback requirements. And a pool is proposed in the front yard requiring variances, but traditionally it's been used as a rear yard. Winchester Road, which is the back portion of the front yard, is a vacated street that connected previously Ventnor Avenue all the way out to approximately Fredericksburg Avenue, which created those unique bends in all these roads in that location. So the zoning chart is on page 2, continued on page 3, documents reviewed, section 2 on page 3, as well as the plans reviewed. So the variances are both highlighted in the zoning chart, as well as section 3 of the report. So I will go through the variances required as follows. Front yard landscape coverage, whereas the minimum required front yard landscape coverage is 60% or 50% with steps, and less than 60% in coverage is proposed on a Winchester Road frontage. Again, that is being proposed to be
The only
used.
variance is for the backyard, right? The back front yard?
Yes, the front yard facing Winchester Road, which will be used as a rear
Right.
yard. Accessory structure, swimming pool location, whereas the swimming pools are accessory structures and cannot be located within the front yard setback. And one is proposed on the Winchester Road frontage based on the prevailing front yard setbacks. And again, you're comparing front yard setbacks to a rear yard setback, it would meet the requirement. Accessory structure for the fence, same thing as the pool, fences are not allowed to be in the front yard setback, and one fence is proposed to be in the front yard setback. Driveway access location, whereas if a property has alternate access for parking, it must be used, and access from the main road, which is North Exeter Avenue, is proposed instead of Winchester Road frontage. Again, I think requiring the use of Winchester Road as parking access would deny this applicant a full use of the front yard, which will be used as a rear yard. So now we're perfectly clear on that. Again, just some comments. The property is an existing non-conforming lot in regard to lot width. That's, they requested a variance for that, but that's existing non-conforming. I don't believe a variance is required. If you want to grant it, that's fine. It's just belts and suspenders. The dwelling is being more centered on a lot, improved setbacks on the one side for fire code. 2 stories over parking is being proposed. Again, lot width, that complies with that. Due to the front yards and the yards along Winchester Road has traditionally been used as a rear yard for this particular property. However, by definition, it is a front yard and triggers the variances for pool location and fence location. I do believe the lots to the left and to the right have garages in the front yard also.
The back
So,
yard.
the back front yard, yes. And again, I will turn it over to the applicant at this time.
Roger, before you start, the street trees, you're only putting them on one side?
Yes, technically, the front yard on Winchester Road, the property line is almost at the curb line, so any street trees that would be there would be way into their property.
Does sidewalk stand?
A suggestion in my report was, again, the public sidewalk is basically on the applicant's property. I don't know how that can be reconfigured, but this is not the only location this occurs. Often Dolphin Drive is the same situation. But my recommendation is, look, part of the lot coverage is being covered by city sidewalk. So I would recommend, if they do put trees back there, that they don't have to be large street trees. I think there's enough room on Exeter Avenue to provide those.
So you're not mandating it on the back?
They can't fit in the street?
Yeah,
Right. That's it.
Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Eric Goldstein on behalf of the applicants, Jeff and Fern Llewellyn. Just by way of background, as Mr. Chairman points out, this does qualify, Mr. Lolio will testify in a minute, as your classic zoning hardship case. It's almost like a law school exam. You've got a front and then a front and the rear, which we're calling the front, but it's really the rear front. And then you've got 2 frontages based upon a street, which was a vacated street, teeing off in the rear front. So it's not very clear. But I think Mr. Lolio can make it clearer than I can. What we're looking for is hardship variances as well as substantial benefit variances for the configuration of the rear front, which will have potential for a pool, a fence, and then, of course, access for parking will be off of the front, and Bob's going to talk about that. So when we're discussing this tonight, based on what you said, Mr. Chairman, about what cases should and should not come before the board, we do think we have here a classic hardship. The unique placement of the lot at the end of Winchester, the unique situation that this applicant has that very, very few other applicants have. I went to the tax office to find out how many homes in Margate have a Winchester Road address. There's 3. So very rare, and this one is the only one on Winchester Road that tees off into the backyard. And there's not that many. Even at the end of a cul-de-sac, it's different because you have road circulation. Here, there's no circulation at all. It's just a dead end, unfortunately, in the Llewellyn backyard. So having said that by way of a preamble, I'd like to have Mr. Lolio, who's to my left, sworn in by Mr. Manos. We could talk about the house itself. Bob will, of course, establish the positive and negative criteria. And then just pointing out, I'm sure Mr. McLaren and Mr. Manos have conferred here, because Mr. Chairman, you did point this out. This application is in under the time of application rule. It was in prior to the change of the zoning. So to the extent board members have questions, we're bound by the zoning prior to the change in August. So we're also going under that scenario by way of not needing other variances, kind of as we discussed last month when Mr. Richmond was chairing the meeting. So, Bob, if you don't mind, have Leo swear you in. Go from here.
All right, Mr. Lolio, just give us your name and business address, please.
Robert Lolio, 219 Bellevue Avenue, Hamilton, New Jersey.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, and you've been your licensed architect, been before our board numerous times.
Yeah, we accept your credentials.
Okay. Bob, you've heard the preamble. You've obviously prepared the plans. We've been reviewing this one for Jeff and Fern for quite some time. Can you please walk us through the house you've designed, specifically the issues regarding the back front and the front, and how we think that the design you put together is better than if we were to use the back front as a regular front for access?
So the lot was 35.19 by 109.26, so it's less than 40 foot wide. We're currently proposing a two-story dwelling over the parking level, which meets the new ordinance. But like we said, we're keeping the 18-foot curb cut. So as far as the plan, the front we're considering on Exeter Avenue, and then the rear yard is off of Winchester. And it's just the way, as Eric mentioned, it tees off dead ends in the backyard. And based on the adjacent dwellings, everybody else on the street has a front driveway, front yard on Exeter, and a lot of the rear yards are, it's not even, they're all considered legal rear yards. It's just that the way that this tees off with the rear access, that it triggers the driveway to be on the rear alley side.
And Bob, out of an abundance of caution, we started working on this. Mr. McLarnon wanted the rear survey as well as the front survey by way of 200-foot setback and by way of additional information supplied to the city. We've had that done on behalf of the property owner, correct?
Correct.
So not only do we have a calculation of the front setbacks, we have a calculation of the front rear setback, depending on how the board considers this, whether it's going to be a rear or a front. But either way, we still have gone that extra step based on the request of the board to have more information presented as opposed to less.
Correct. The rear yard, the front rear yard setback on Winchester was required to be 11.12 to the porch, or 21 feet, and then the building was 16.32 feet, and we're at 25 feet. So we're way beyond the average setback. And if it was considered a rear yard, I think it was 21.5 feet back. That was required if it was considered a legal rear yard. So we're meeting both a rear yard setback and a front yard average setback.
Hey, Eric, can I ask a question? Does anybody in the audience want to see the plan? Can you turn that just a little bit, Bob? Thank you. Is that okay, board?
So Bob, also of great importance, there won't be any traffic flow in and out of the rear yard, correct?
No.
Winchester Road will have no access at all in and out of the property, no matter what.
Correct.
Thank you.
And as Roger mentioned, there's a lot of detached, there's a detached garage right on the property line on the north side, and then on the southern side, there's another detached garage. So you're flanked by two detached garages in the rear yards of the adjacent property.
But we're treating the development as if this were just a plain old regular lot. There's not going to be any kind of flow from the front to the rear and then out the rear. Everything's going to meet the other coverage with regard to landscaping. You're designing this house as if this problem didn't exist, but we know we have to address the issues that do exist, correct?
Correct. And all the other variances are based off of that rear yard, like the front yard landscape coverage requirement on Winchester. We're not meeting that, but we're meeting the overall total landscape coverage.
And we're over on Exeter, as if this were a front, the Exeter landscaping is being met, correct?
Correct.
And if you were to calculate the total, regardless of the two fronts, we're over on that somewhat substantially.
Correct.
So landscaping-wise, with the exception of the front rear, which is the back off of Winchester Road, we don't need any landscape variances.
Correct.
Okay. And again, had this house not been subject to the hardship of having two streets, one in the back and along the front, we would meet all of the other requirements aside from lot width, which we can't do anything about, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's all, continue.
It's not about a variance, but on this schedule, it says you have 5 bedrooms equals 3 spaces, and you're providing 4 spaces.
Correct.
I can only find 4 bedrooms. Where's that 5th bedroom, please?
There are only 4 spaces.
There's only 4 bedrooms.
4 bedrooms.
So that should say on the schedule, it should say 4 bedrooms requires 2 spaces, and you're gonna provide us with 4 spaces. Because
If we can,
you can.
yeah.
And I also saw on the houses, the building coverage is required 1,361 square feet. I see you have 1,360 square feet. You're 1 square foot under, is that correct? You maxed out completely.
The building footprint is maxed out.
The building footprint is maxed out, okay, within 1 square foot. Okay, but Roger, is there anything about with the 4 bedrooms and 2 required spaces?
Pardon me?
Since it's not 5 spaces on here, this is a mistake. It should read 4 bedrooms equals 2 spaces,
But that's minimum, Greg.
minimum. So we can give them as many as they want, right, as they require.
As long as it doesn't require a variance.
All right?
Right,
Okay.
as long as it meets the minimum.
I'm done with that.
The other variance that was triggered is the rear yard, the rear yard, the fence on Winchester Avenue. We needed that because of the pool. So we're putting a fence along the back property line.
So while we're on that area, you're gonna leave all that concrete there?
That's I guess we would like to get rid of it.
I mean, a suggestion would be, Margate's ordinance requires a minimum public sidewalk width to be 5 feet, so it's 5.5 if you include the curb. If you wanted to cut out like maybe 3 or 4 feet and put shrubs along there to hide the fence,
Yeah, we would
Yeah,
agree.
that's fine, that's good, and you want more,
and that'll give you more landscape coverage in the front rear, or rear front.
that would be acceptable, and certainly it's nicer for the family to have more landscape coverage there. But again, I just want to make sure that we're lessening the width of the sidewalk. That's not going to run afoul of anything for the city, correct, Jim?
No, the minimum width is 5 feet.
Okay.
So we'll keep the fence where it is, just have a little landscaping in front of it.
Have a little buffer there.
On the street side.
Yeah, that'll soften the look of the fence.
Just cut out like
Right.
3 feet.
Well, no, I don't think, that'll be a closed fence. Because there's going to be a pool back there, and,
The proximity to the
It's-
street, I think you want the solid
Yeah.
right there.
there'll be landscaping on the other side of it, of course. That's it. I mean, as far as the explanation of the plan, board members have questions, we're certainly going to answer them. I think there's some members of the public who might have some questions, but
So the minimum lot area is 2,500 square feet required. They exceed that, they have 3,760 square feet. Again, the lot width is 40 feet, and they have 35 feet. And again, that could be a function of when Winchester Road was vacated 120 years ago. Landscape coverage is, overall, it's exceeding it. Building coverage is right on. They don't need any setback requirements for the building itself. So it's, again, we're here because of that strange situation.
right, I think that strange situation, just so everyone's aware, this is your textbook hardship case. If the board is looking for a reason to grant this, and where they're looking for a reason to have further questions, we'll certainly answer that. But what you've got is the inability of the property owner to comply without variances. What you get without variances is a design that's untenable. So I know some board members might have some questions about what we're doing, whether we need all that off-street parking, whether we need the house maxed out as it is. Those are not variances. The only variances are the rear front because of the way the house is situated on the lot.
Eric, the only thing I have, Bob, change the swing on the gates. They got to go out, not in.
Yes.
Sure.
Anything else from the board? Anyone here?
The adjacent properties, you spoke about the garages on the adjacent properties. The adjacent properties have frontage on Winchester? No, they do.
Actually, I think the one on the right has a small frontage. The one on the left is fully fronted on Winchester Road.
But that's not our concern
Yeah,
at this meeting. No, I understand, but it's not like, oh, is it okay? Is it not
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
That's not our concern.
understood.
Okay.
But we got to be cognizant that Lot 8, which is to the left, their only access is Winchester Road, so we can't prohibit their access.
Anyone here from the public have any questions, comments? Please come forward, and before you speak, state your name and address, and then wait to be sworn in.
My name is Amy Seiden, 19 North Frontenac.
All right, Ms. Seiden,
Oh,
welcome back.
Thank
Please
you.
raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you'll give tonight will be the truth?
yes.
Thank you.
Well, I've lived in that house, which is part of that cul-de-sac, for 47 years. The backyard of that house was always the backyard. I don't know why it's so confusing now, the front yard, the backyard, two front yards. I don't even know what the plan is, but are you trying to say that there's going to be parking spots now where the white fence is?
No,
What's going to be different on that part of the cul-de-sac?
nothing.
There's no new driveway going
Nothing.
back there. Because there are two driveways already from the other properties, and it's too crowded.
Nothing.
Okay. So
The point was,
Yes.
by the letter of the law, that's considered a front yard. In all reality, it's their backyard with a fence.
Yes,
But because technically it's the front yard, we have to give them a variance to let them use it as a backyard.
okay. Now, where the fence is now that they constructed, there's no setback at all. That fence, I think, would be okay for the swimming pool, but the yard is not big enough for a swimming pool. And the house next to it has a swimming pool, and the house across the street from me is putting a swimming pool. And our water table is so high, I don't think we can keep digging all these holes in the earth, putting all these swimming pools in.
They're not asking a variance for a swimming pool other than it's in the front yard.
Okay.
It's going to be,
But-
people have swimming pools in Margate that are now 5 foot by 5 foot. It's crazy.
If you look
But-
on Frontenac Avenue where they're building a new house and they dug out a hole for a new swimming pool, it's been at least 3 weeks that they've been pumping water out from underground. And the house, where is all the water going when there has to be sucked out the water of the swimming pool in the winter, or if it's not covered and the water rain is overflowing? Our little section where we live, it can't even absorb rainfall now. We have flooding all the time.
Well, I
Our
believe
sewer
it goes into
system
the
can't
street
fill it.
drains. Isn't that required, Mr. Valentino?
Yes.
Street what?
It goes into the street drains. When they have to suck out the water in order to put the pool in, it's directed to the street.
Right,
Right.
and our street cannot tolerate even rain right now. So when you have two new swimming pools coming in, one just came in last year, I think there's going to be some ground shifting, and there's no more flooding because there's nowhere for that water to go. And what else can I say? And also, when you put the swimming pool in, aren't you taking away some of the percolated area and some of the
You
green
are, and they
space?
still meet landscape coverage.
They
The
still meet
pools
land.
used to be, years ago, if you had a pool, it was counted as basically grass, which was ridiculous.
Yes.
When Mr. McClarney came in, he said, this is ridiculous. So that now counts as impervious coverage, as if it was a thing.
Right.
Even with that pool there, they have enough grass to have their 35% of landscape coverage.
That's really hard for me to believe, but when the swimming pool is
I wouldn't
there,
lie to you, I swear.
I'm just trying to picture, because I look at it and I'm seeing where the pool's going to be postage stamp size, I guess, because there's no room for anything around the pool for,
Well, there must be, it has to be 6 feet from the property line, and it has to be 3 feet from the house. So there has to be something around the pool.
3 feet around the pool.
No, 6 feet
6
from the
feet
property
From
line,
the property
and
line.
3 feet from the house.
They meet all the requirements for the pool.
The other thing is, by having that pool there, it's so close to the other 2-3 properties in that cul-de-sac, it's gonna be the noise factor. Every time they're out there having a good time or a party, it's like all the neighbors are gonna be so close on top of
The
That's
pool's
not
not a
a-
variance. The pool's not a variance.
not a
But, and that's
There's
not,
nothing wrong with the pool.
that's not, you want to come talk to the city works, you want to talk to the city fathers. It's not a matter that the board has any control over.
So we're only going for a variance of what? The setback?
A variance because the front yard is really a backyard, but we have to make a variance for that to happen. The other variance is the lot has to be 40 feet wide. It's only 35 feet wide.
Right.
But there was already a house there, so we have to let them build on that lot. We can't turn that variance down. The
Okay.
third variance is if you have a front yard on a main street and a front yard on an auxiliary street,
Yes.
the entrance, you're supposed to put a driveway back where you don't want a driveway.
Yeah.
So we're giving them a variance so they don't put a driveway back there and we leave it like it is.
Okay,
That's
but-
the three variances
But
that they
because
get.
it is a front yard, in quotation marks.
Right?
To put the swimming pool in is a variance.
Yes, because they're stuck with two front yards.
But the swimming pool is a problem for the neighbors, I believe. And I don't consider this case, I mean, I don't know the people, I'm sure they're very nice people. But
I don't
they're
like
not
the-
having a unfortunate situation, what's that word you use? A hardship. They're gonna have 4 parking spaces instead of 2. And they're gonna have a wide house, which is taller. I don't know what the
They're
hardship
meeting all
is.
the side yard setbacks, so that's not a variance. The house, what was the first thing? They have 4 parking spots because it's not taking away any landscaping. They're meeting all the rules. We can't say, well, we're not gonna let you do that even though it meets the rules.
I know where they have a tiny narrow driveway now that fits 1, maybe 2 cars back to back
But parking's gonna be under the house now.
for 4 spots.
2 on the under the house, 2 on Exeter. Nothing on your side.
Oh, okay, 2
Your
under
side's
the
not
house.
gonna have a
You won't
driveway.
notice it on your side. There's that white fence there now, and it's gonna be there when you're done. The only thing you'll notice is there's gonna be landscaping on the street side of that fence, which is gonna make it look
There's no
nice.
room right now where the fence is for any street landscape.
Yes, there is. You have a 5-foot sidewalk, and then you have 3 feet of concrete, which is gonna be landscaped. That's the room that's there.
Well, I don't think I have a picture right now.
Here, come
but
here, I'll show you. This is, no worries. wait a
I
second.
can't read the
I
chart.
have nothing else to do. Come here. Look. There's gonna be more landscaping back here, where right now there's just nothing. So what you're getting is a guarantee of no cars, extra landscaping, and this is gonna remain the same. Everything's gonna be here, and there'll be a pool here at some point, but there'll be landscaping.
Don't know where the landscape is being done, outside of the fence?
Yes,
Near Winchester Road?
yes.
Because right now that fence goes to the sidewalk.
But we're removing
Right.
3 feet.
No,
of
it
concrete.
doesn't.
So we're getting rid of 3
Oh,
feet
you're
of
making a
concrete.
narrower sidewalk, that's why.
Yeah, right now.
It's on their
not like it
property.
used to be.
It's their property, and the sidewalk will be, what's remaining will be a legal-sized sidewalk. It will not be any less than what's required.
It'll be much better, because there's more landscaping and no access to your side.
Okay,
You're almost precluding that from happening forever now.
okay, well,
And I think, I have to reread the rules, but I don't think we can prohibit kids from going into the swimming pool, so.
right, right.
Thank you for coming. I know
Okay.
you were here last time, so.
Yeah, because there's so much going on in our little neighborhood.
Every neighborhood in town.
But here's another thing. Every house that's being built now is bigger and heavier than it ever was before.
It's bigger because of FEMA rules, and people are paying millions of dollars for little
I
postage stamps at
understand,
Margate.
but we live on an island, which is sandy, high water table. I don't know how much we can keep building.
Well,
We don't dredge our basin and we're gonna lose our trees. So write somebody up there in Trenton about dredging our bay and the regulations of that.
and talk to FEMA in Washington, because these things that you're talking about, we don't have control over.
All right, but the shifting ground, when there's too much displacement and nowhere for the water to run off into the grass?
That's why we're having more landscape.
This is what we're gonna put more landscaping. So it's a small, over the course of the entire island, difference, but it's a better difference as opposed to one.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public have any questions, comments? Please state your name and address and then be sworn in.
Sure. Todd Murphy, 11 North Franklin Avenue.
Frank Rockford. All right, Mr.
Franklin.
Murphy,
Franklin.
please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, thanks.
No, I just wanted to say I do support the applicant for this. I actually have the lot next to him, and I actually have a driveway off Winchester Road. So it's difficult to begin with to get in there. To have another driveway in the back would be a disaster. So I support the
We're
applicant.
doing this for you.
Thank you.
We aim to please. Anyone else in the public? Public portion is closed. If there's nothing else on the board, Leo, would you read a motion?
Okay, the board's ready for a motion. It's a C variance application. I'll run through the variances. I'll note the lot width, that's an existing condition, but they have 35 feet where 40 is required. The front yard landscaping on the Winchester Road side requires 60% or 50% with steps. They're below that. Do we have, we don't have a precise number on that.
No, and actually, it might meet it with the extra landscaping.
Okay. Well, the swimming pool location, because that Winchester Road side is technically a front yard, they need a variance to have the pool. And then the fence around the pool, again, you need to have a fence around the pool, but you can't have fences in the front yard, so they need a variance for the fence in the front yard, and then the driveway access location. When you have an alternative access, you're required to use it for parking, which would be off Winchester Road, and they're not doing that, which seems like it's the one thing that certainly everyone's in agreement there. In terms of conditions, Mr. Galantino wants the gates to swing out, not in. Is that
Fine.
Well,
correct?
that'll be a construction code issue.
That's probably a
anyway.
construction code issue anyway. Street trees, what are we doing with street trees? Two on Exeter?
2 on Exeter, that's it.
Okay, 2 required on Exeter, and then we'll just note the other standard conditions that are.
With a grass strip, not just trees. It needs the full landscape.
Yeah, they have the
strip.
governor
Governor Strip
strip.
and 2 street trees on Exeter. And then we'll just note the standard conditions, subject to
There were
any.
Shrubs on the fence side, did you mention that, Leo?
Are they not on the plan?
No.
Okay, so yeah, on the fence side, thanks. You're gonna add the shrubs on the fence side on Winchester Road, and then we'll note the standard conditions, subject to any necessary outside approvals that you may need. Anything else in Mr. McLaren's report unless otherwise addressed, any representations you made during the course of the hearing.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
Tom Collins.
I think, as previously said, Mr. Patterson said it very well, that this is a really true hardship. It does meet C1, C2 criterion, probably better than anything I've seen in 20 years on this board. You don't really get too many houses where you have actual 2 fronts. You have corners, but not street to street. And if it is street to street, like down at Decatur, they're all rears. So this is kind of unusual. I think it'll make a major improvement to the neighborhood. I think the hardship is very greatly justified, and I wish you a lot of luck, and I vote in favor.
Craig Palmisano.
Yeah, I agree with Tom said, and front yard landscape, you have the coverage there. If you didn't have the coverage, you wouldn't have the extra car. But you also get under the wire for the ordinance changes, and but it's got 2 fronts, and it's going to be pretty much the way it is now with a backyard with a pool, and I approve it.
Richard Patterson.
Something that hasn't been brought up in this case, they could go 2.5 stories. This is only a 2-story house, which is a boon to the neighborhood, to the city, there's less bedrooms, as, I guess that's why Greg only saw 4 when there may have been 5 before. And I think that's a big bonus that it's only 2 stories and doesn't have the giant houses that everyone else is allowed to have. And again, I say this is a beautiful case for the board. I love seeing these cases where it is very cut and dry that The master plan does not apply in this particular case, and that's the whole purpose of the planning board, is to be here for such cases. So I wholeheartedly approve.
John Pitts.
Yeah, this is definitely a unique property. I have to say that anytime somebody asks for a hardship and a swimming pool in the same breath, I struggle with that a little bit. But I think the home is great, and I approve.
Michael Cristaldi.
I don't see any detriment to the neighborhood. It's just a definite improvement. The hardship on it of the two fronts, I definitely approve.
Jim Galantino.
Yeah, the lot was created, the hardship with the street end, making it a front yard for a pool. That would definitely grant them a hardship case just on that alone. I approve.
Margaret Gubernalty.
I agree with the other board members here. The house is being maxed out on the lot, but it is not a variance. It is certainly a hardship case, but it conforms to the intent of the master plan, so I approve the application.
Remy Pelosi.
I concur with the other board members and approve.
And Michael Richmond.
Yeah, I agree with the other board members. It's definitely a hardship situation, and I don't think it's exacerbating the situation, so I'm going to vote yes.
The application is approved with 9 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you.
I apologize for attacking you so harshly, Mr. Goldstein, so I know you feel insulted. The next case is Ronald G. Wilk, 9719 Beach Avenue, Block 31.01, Lot 1, located in the MF zoning district, seeking amended final site plan approval and a C variance relief for minimum front yard setback, landscaping, and possibly others in order to construct a first and second story deck. Taxes and water payments are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Mr. McLarnon?
Thank you, Board Chairman and Board members. The report is based on the application of Ronald Wilk, 19 Beach Avenue, Block 31.01, Lot 1, located in the multifamily or MF zone. It is located in the coastal A zone and subject to those requirements. I believe the property is under construction and is being constructed based on the coastal A requirements. Background, it's pretty extensive, but I'll give the Cliff Note version. The applicant is seeking relief in order to construct a new front yard deck for the first and second floors of a new townhouse under construction, which is one unit of 20 units approved in the 1970s, actually 1977, as one overall development. The lots are subdivided for fee simple ownership. However, the overall development should be reviewed as one site since the coverage and setbacks treated as one site. The 20 units were all damaged during, or actually the 10 units on the beach were all damaged during Superstorm Sandy. And this particular unit was reconstructed in kind at the lowest highest. There's another front yard, backyard, but lowest highest required elevation as a result of litigation. The litigation also resulted in the standard of when to apply variances for nonconformities and permits reconstruction of the same exact building if it cannot be elevated. That is the case here. So Mr. Weiss did a wonderful job replicating the same exact building that was there, but at the lower of the highest requirement as per FEMA requirements in the city's floodplain prevention ordinance. So 10 units face Atlantic Avenue and 10 face the beach. The rear yards were used as an access easement for parking and trash pickup. The site was approved based on 2 buildings containing 10 units each with variances. So this can be viewed as a hardship variance and a substantial benefit variance also. And the zoning chart is on page 2, continue on page 3. The variances aren't many, but there's I'll list the variances now. Minimum front yard setback for decks for the first floor, Coolidge Avenue, whereas the minimum front yard setback based on the average is 12.4 feet, 7.9 feet is proposed. Same thing for the second floor deck. Minimum side yard deck for the first floor on the right, whereas the minimum side yard setback is 8 feet, 0 feet exists, and 0 feet is proposed. Actually, that when I was redoing the zoning. That's not a variance anymore. Minimum side yard setback. No, it is. The minimum side yard setback is 8 feet, 0 feet exists, and 0 feet is proposed. Again, they had approval to lift the house with the decks where they were in the front. They're extending it closer to Coolidge Avenue to access the other decks. So 0-foot setback exists and proposed. It's an expansion of a non-conforming setback. Same thing for the second floor deck. Beachfront deck height, the maximum permitted deck height on a beach is BFE plus 20 inches, and BFE plus 36 inches is proposed. Again, they're proposing to match the decks that were approved based on the elevation of a non-conforming structure. Total yard landscape coverage, whereas the minimum required landscape coverage is 35%. It may be reduced to 30% due to stairs, 32% exists, and 22% is proposed. Again, I won't go through all my notes and comments. I believe the applicant and the attorney have read them, and their justification is on them.
Thank you.
All you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, board professionals. My name is Kevin Balistreri. I'm an attorney with Hankin, Sandman, Palladino, Weintraub, and Bell in Atlantic City. I'm here this evening on behalf of the applicant, Ronald Wilk. We're seeking, as you heard, final site plan approval and C variance relief for a minimum front yard setback, landscaping, and possibly others to construct first and second story deck on the property at 9719 Beach Avenue, which is block 3101 in Margate. I'm joined this evening by my clients, Ron and Karen Wilk, as well as their builder, Dan Del Monte of Del Monte Builders, as well as our architectural expert, Peter Weiss, and our professional planning and engineering expert, John Barnhart of A.W. Ponzio and Associates. I'd like to start off just by briefly having my client come up and introduce himself and talk about the genesis of this application and what we're seeking today.
Since we're swearing him in, can we swear everybody in at the same time?
Please, yeah.
We can just go down the line. We'll ask Mr. Wilk to state his name and address for the record, and then just go down the line. Same thing, business address or address, if you're not a professional.
Everybody.
And use the microphone, please.
Ronald Wilk. You want my address here in Margate? 9719 Beach Avenue.
That's fine.
Peter Weiss, 38 East Oakcrest Avenue, Northfield. John Barnhart, 400 North Dover Avenue, Atlantic City. Dan Del Monte, 1812 Haddonfield Berlin Road, Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Okay, and if you can each please raise your right hand. Do you each swear affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth?
I do.
I do.
Okay, and we'll just note Mr. Weiss is an architect, Mr. Barnhart a planner and engineer, and I assume their credentials are accepted?
Yes, but I don't recognize.
He's the builder. He's not necessarily.
Del Monte's the builder. I'm not even planning on calling him for
It's
testimony.
okay. I don't have to accept his credentials. I didn't know if he.
No. No, Mr. Chair. He's just here in case the board does have questions about materials or the process or the time for completion, that kind of stuff. So starting with the applicant, Mr. Ron Wilk, you just gave your name and address for the record. Are you the owner of 9719 Beach Avenue?
Me and my wife.
Okay. And the two of you are the applicant for this application?
We are.
When did you acquire this property?
I think it was October 12th, 2022.
Okay. And what was the condition of the property when you acquired it?
It was inhabitable. It had to be torn down and rebuilt. In fact, I remember meeting with Mr. Galantino, and my first question was, can I just rehab the house? And the answer was no.
And what happened to the property to put it in that condition?
As I understood it, Sandy, ruined it.
Okay. And it's currently in the process of being reconstructed pursuant to approved plans, is that right?
Yes, it was, the house that was there was taken down to the ground. It's a complete new rebuild.
Okay.
But this was raised to the proper flood elevation, correct?
Yes.
But the other ones weren't, yeah.
That's correct.
Okay.
As you pointed out, I think the minimum elevation required by FEMA.
Right. Is it fair to say that you've put a lot of time and effort and money into rehabbing this property?
Very fair to say.
And in addition to what's been required of you, did you actually replace the bulkhead on the property?
Yes, replace the entire bulkhead on the property.
And it's now FEMA compliant, it's compliant with the code of the city of Margate, pursuant to
Yes.
the approved plans as they currently stand?
Compliant and gorgeous.
Okay, fantastic.
Did you construct a new bulkhead for the entire 20 units, or just right in front of your house?
In front of my house.
Okay.
But you didn't have to do that, right?
I did not have to do that.
And that would also benefit the neighbors behind you?
Absolutely.
Now, we're really here tonight to talk about a deck, which is not part of the current plans, but we're hoping can be part of the revised plans. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And what made you want to add this kind of wraparound deck to the property?
When I acquired the property back in October of 2022, there had been plans that were already approved by Margate that did not include this decking that I'm proposing now. Quite honestly, it needs it. The property is actually narrower than all of the other homes because the way they had to rebuild the house, it's on piers, whereas all the other houses are right next to each other. So my house is actually narrower than the others.
Understood.
And in speaking to some of the other neighbors, there's 20 total townhomes in that development, 10 on Beach Avenue, 10 on Atlantic. And there's a covenant deed restriction and covenants and restrictions that run with all 20 of the properties. And I needed to obtain a majority approval from the 20 homeowners to do what I'm proposing. And I received approval from 18 out of the 19 other homeowners.
Okay, well, you kind of stealing my thunder. We're going to head here. I'm
Sorry.
going to back up a little bit. Did you discuss this project with your neighbors?
I did.
Okay. And what was the general feedback that you got?
Why aren't you putting a deck on the side?
So people said that to you before you even came up with this application?
Absolutely.
Okay, now you mentioned that this 20, about 20-unit townhome community is governed by a declaration of covenants and restrictions. Is that right?
Yes, there's no homeowners association, but there is covenants and restrictions that run with all of the deeds.
Great. And one of the conditions is that if you want to make an addition or an alteration, you need majority approval, meaning 11 out of 20 units, right?
Correct.
Now, you said that you've obtained consent forms from 18 out of the 19 other unit owners?
I'm one, and then there's 19 other homeowners, and I received written consent from the 18 others.
So
So
19.
you have that written, that's evidence?
I sure do.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, that was submitted with the application. A lot of these properties are vacation homes, so we couldn't have 20 people come in, but you do have those, and I have copies here this evening.
It's very important to me, so I just wanted to make sure it wasn't your word for it, that you actually had written confirmation of that.
Yes, and I had conversations with each and every homeowner there. I met them, we engaged in conversation, there were some thoughtful questions, and I provided answers, and everyone was satisfied that I spoke with.
So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that's what attorneys are good at. You're saying that 19 out of 20 of the people or the unit owners that live there are in support of this application?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Mr. Wilk, I have no further questions for you. I appreciate you coming out and providing testimony tonight. Up next, I'd like to call our architectural expert, Peter Weiss. And, Mr. Chairman, I understand I don't need to go through his educational credentials and his experience. He's been
I'm
approved.
sorry, I didn't mean this. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Although they are quite impressive. I was looking at his bio this afternoon.
I didn't say that, you said that.
Well, I sure did. Mr. Weiss, did you prepare the architectural plans for this project?
Yes.
Okay, and can you just please briefly give an overview of those plans and take the board through all the salient points that you think they should know?
I wanted to give a little bit more history. So, as mentioned, this house was damaged in Sandy. It was subsequently condemned, so it had to be torn down. I did design the house for the previous owner, who went through litigation. It lasted quite a few years. And then he got permission and a court ruling to allow him to proceed. Then my previous owner, client, sold it to Mr. Wilk. And I guess we finished, well, I guess the drawings were done by then. So then Mr. Wilk approached me about well, let me just describe real quick, yeah. So the house is 2 stories. It's about 1,650 square feet, so there's small units. And there's currently, as part of the original design, there was a deck on both levels on the beach side, but only on the beach side. So what we propose to do is extend the decks down Coolidge Avenue. And this is technically the front. The beach is the side, because it's not a street. So that's the reason for the side yard variance. As far as the setback goes, I made an error in my bulk requirement schedule. There's only one front deck on this street. There's only one other house, which is the one on Atlantic Avenue. That's got a cantilever deck on the second floor that sticks out about 5 feet. So his setback is about 9.9 feet. When I did my calculation, I included our lot, and I shouldn't have. So the actual required setback becomes 9.9 feet, and we're seeking 7.9 as a setback. This technically doesn't count as a front because it's not closer to the street than the building.
How high is the deck off of the ground? The bottom deck? The proposed bottom deck, there's 2 decks, correct?
7 feet. 78 inches. That's it.
Well, that's, I don't need the inches, it's,
It's going 6.5 feet.
so even though that means you're losing that much landscaping, because you look at the landscaping with a bird's eye view, there'll still be landscaping there, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Well, oh, yeah, it doesn't count, but I just want to know if it will be landscaped.
Yes. So the green area here is the landscaped area on the site plan.
I'm talking about what's under the decks.
Under the deck?
Yeah,
No, that's going to be sand. That's just sand.
it's 7 feet off the ground? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you said 17, I'm sorry.
No.
No, I take that back, got it.
Yeah, we'll probably enclose it with some kind of lattice or
I was off by 10 feet.
Second floor deck, will that be solid material?
Yes. So the first floor deck would be composite decking, so that's open, but the second floor deck would be some kind of solid membrane, to provide cover for the first floor deck. And that's, pretty standard. So that makes the first floor deck permeable and the second floor not. So, even though this is the front of the building with regard to zoning, in reality, it's the side of the building for all intents and purposes, because these buildings all kind of line up this way. So it's really the side. And this was kind of a, fairly large blank facade largely because of the court case made us sort of replicate what was there before, and that's what was there before, so that's, what we were kind of locked into. So my thinking is, by extending the decks down the side, we're creating some depth, and that helps the depth and the appearance of the building, as opposed to just a flat wall that's going up, 2.5 stories. And
Well, Mr. Weiss, actually, before we turn it over to John, I just had one question. Landscaping was brought up. Do you recall the types of landscaping that we're planning to put in there? Because when this was kind of a blight and dilapidated, if you drove by, it was just weeds and
Like the other end.
overgrown, correct, Mr. Chair. And I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, as part of this, although we're proposing slightly less landscaping in general, some of the plantings, we're talking about beach plums, crabapple, ornamental grass, cypress, native plants. Is that all accurate, Mr. Weiss?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. All right, at this point in time, I'd like to call John Barnhart, my planner and engineer.
Hey, Roger, just a quick question. I know we have artificial grass now in some respect, no?
In the center strip of a driveway.
In the center strip of the driveway only.
Correct.
So he couldn't put artificial grass under that deck instead of sand and have it count as landscaping?
No. No, because the second floor deck is covered solid.
It's covered.
You can only use artificial grass if you meet all the other landscape requirements. I mean, then what's the difference between concrete or artificial grass, so
Right, but I think, and Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, even if he had put real grass under,
It wouldn't count.
because the second floor deck's solid from a bird watch, it would count.
Well, even if it wasn't solid.
No, it's a bird's eye view. If it's covered, it's not landscaping.
All right, Mr. Barnhart, I understand you've already been approved as an expert, so I'm going to skip your educational and professional credentials. Can you please give the board an overview of your involvement in this project from a planning and engineering perspective?
Sure. We've been working with the client and their builder from the start of construction, doing construction surveying and layout, and then we helped with the surveying that was utilized to bring this application forward this evening.
Okay. And did you have a chance to review the review memorandum submitted by Mr. McLarnon?
I did.
Okay. And would you please share with the board just your professional opinion on the variances that are required and the justification for same?
Sure. So I'm going to speak from an example. This is a Google aerial shot. It's a little bit dated. Obviously, you can see the old building is still in view on this or on this aerial, but I think it really tells the picture of what's taking place on this site and why we think what we're asking for is justified. So the block we're talking about is Coolidge Avenue oceanfront. The building specific that we're talking about is the unit of the 20-unit project that is right on the corner of Coolidge Avenue at the oceanfront and the beach. As you can see, immediately adjacent to this unit, there is a landscaped area which then leads to the public sidewalk and the Coolidge Avenue street end. As was described already, that structure, well, most of these structures sustained substantial damage. That structure was torn down and reconstructed within its existing prior footprint, and that's what you see sitting on the property today if you visited the site.
Just the footprint or the entire property had to match what was there? The whole thing?
Yeah, the whole thing had to match, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. So why are we here tonight? We're here for one thing tonight. That's to wrap two decks, as Mr. Weiss already pointed out in his plan, around the corner of the building. The two previously approved decks on the oceanfront, to wrap two decks around the corner of the building, obviously for the benefit of our client, but also we believe this is one of those applications, and it's interesting, Mr. Patterson, hearing your discussion earlier.
Rant, you mean?
I didn't say that, you did. This is one of those applications where there is a purpose of zoning that exists in the municipal land use law that discusses creation of a more desirable visual environment through creative design techniques. It's a purpose of zoning in the state of New Jersey, and we think it really goes to the heart of an application like this. So why do I say that? Well, if you visited this site, you see that this building is a blank wall on Coolidge Avenue at the oceanfront. That doesn't exist in Margate. The oceanfront properties at those corner lots are one after another going down the island are absolutely gorgeous, with decks and all different unique things going on to make them aesthetically pleasing.
Mr. Barnhart, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. I apologize. Along with our application, everyone got a series of photographs, which was a requirement under the checklist. I'm showing a photograph right now. I believe it's the first one in the series. They might have been mixed up. I can't promise it's the first one.
Right.
But it shows this big blocky side. I just want to make sure everyone's looking at this. Is this the condition that you're talking about?
That is the
Off
sidewall,
Coolidge
that's
Avenue?
correct. That is correct,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. Please
Yep,
proceed.
yep, certainly. So we have a wall that is essentially the side of the building at the oceanfront on a prominent street in the city of Margate, Coolidge Avenue. If we were to bring this application before you as a site plan today and propose to develop those buildings along the oceanfront today, I would nearly guarantee that one of the first comments the board would make is you need to improve the aesthetic of that unit that's on the corner, because you don't want to put a side blank side wall right up on the oceanfront, right on Coolidge Avenue in our community. It's not appropriate. Unfortunately, that's the hand that our applicant or our client was dealt with this piece of property. So how do you improve upon that? Improve upon it by doing exactly what they're proposing to do, to wrap modestly sized decks. You know, they're not 12 feet deep, and we're not asking to go to the 5-foot minimum setback if there was no averaging done on this block. Modestly sized decks that wrap the corner at 2 levels, that is essentially what you see on every single one of the beachfront houses. It's a very, very appropriate request. Now, that establishes the positive criteria because we believe that purpose of zoning is advanced. But with an application like this, I think more importantly is how do we prove out the negative criteria? And that is there a substantial detriment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance? And then is there a substantial detriment to the public good? With regard to the zone plan zoning ordinance, I would argue a couple things. Well, first of all, as Peter pointed out, when he originally calculated the front yard setback required, there's only one, actually, I'm going to go back to this for a second. There's only one other building that even comes into play with this, with the calculation, and that's the unit immediately between us and Atlantic Avenue. You can see their second floor wraparound deck, which incidentally is essentially exactly what our client is asking for, that sits right there on the corner of that unit. That's the only structure that we have to measure to create what our average is. So we're not an average, we are bound by our neighbor, our one single neighbor. We don't have any decks that go past our principal building wall, so based on the definition of how you average, as Peter pointed out already, our building doesn't count. So really our average is that deck at 9.9 feet.
Mr. Barnhart, I'm going to stop you again, and I apologize. This is an important point. So you're explaining that the setback here on the street is actually based on the average of our property and the property behind us, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and we measured to the front, on Coolidge Avenue, the front of their second floor deck, for
Correct.
purposes of their measurement, and to the building on our measurement, and then we averaged those, correct?
Correct, except that's what Peter discussed already, is that ours does not
Count.
actually need to count, because there is no porch in the front yard on the Mr. Wilkes structure. So
Understood.
the only structure that actually comes into the calculation is the structure behind us.
Here's my question. The second floor deck on the neighbor behind us, do we know if that was an approved deck?
I don't know that answer.
Do we know if it was part of the site plan?
I also don't know that answer.
Do we know if they ever filed an application and came before the board like the Wilkes are?
We don't know, but that doesn't count here.
I understood, but if it weren't an approved structure, what would the default setback be for the street?
The default setback would be 5 feet.
5 feet, and so we would be more than compliant. We would be by right as far as that variance is concerned.
Correct.
All right, that's all I wanted to get to. Please continue.
So, as I mentioned, the average is that one deck, which is at 9.9 feet. We are proposing a front yard setback that is 7.9 feet. So we're proposing to be 24 inches out beyond the average, from again, when I say beyond the average, beyond our neighbor. So how does that impact the zone plan? In my opinion, it does not have a negative impact on the zone plan, because, as was pointed out, we have a, I don't want to call it unfair, but we have a unique situation here where we're creating our average from one person. If we have one other person on the block that happened to have a 5-foot setback, well, we comply, because the average is 10 to 5, and you're getting there. We're bound by a unique situation with only one other neighbor on the block. Because we are well in excess of the minimum, we are 2.9 feet greater than the minimum. That's where I believe I can argue as a professional planner that we are in keeping with the intent and purpose of the zone plan or zoning ordinance with this application. With regard to setback, and that's both with the front setback and then the oceanfront setback, which is a variance at both levels. Assuming the board's comfortable with the front yard setback, the oceanfront setback is just a function of the lining up of and the access of the two adjacent decks that are on the oceanfront. But as Roger pointed out, they are technically separate variances. The other
Those oceanfront decks, they pre-existed on the old building?
On the old building, and they're back on the new building, correct.
Thank you.
The other variance that's in question tonight is with regard to landscape. So, as you can see from the aerial, the landscape burden was on the end units when this project was originally approved. None of these other applicants, if they were to come in to do something, have any landscaping whatsoever. All the burden's on the end lots. So what I did is I took a look, and if you see from Peter's zoning schedule, he says we're going from 32 to 22. And that math is technically correct, but the realization is, and I think this is a fair approach, our client is also getting saddled with the burden of part of this driveway to all the other units is physically on his lot. So he's got 100% coverage for half of that space in front of his building that he can't do anything about. So if you take the net land area that he has the control over, which is his building, the landscaping in front of it, and take that out, the actual landscape coverage on his lot isn't 22%, it's 32%. So it's a very, very minor deviation. The math is right, it's 22%, but again, it's at the burden of the driveway that accesses all the other 19 units. So when you look at the specifics of this property, and that's been discussed a number of times tonight, you have to look at each property's specifics, how it's unique, how it's different, why the characteristics of that request are appropriate. We believe that, first of all, that the requests of a 2.9-foot deviation in the front yard on the setback, together with what I'm looking at as a 3% deviation with regard to landscaping, although as I said, the math really is that we're at 22%, we believe that those are very, very de minimis requests. But what we get here is we get the benefit of a dramatically improved aesthetic at a very, very high visibility location. So I think that the trade-off there is very, very much warranted. The second prong of the negative criteria is there is substantial detriment to the public good. My opinion is the only person that it hurts, if it hurts anybody, is an impact to that neighboring property. We're only proposing to be about 24 inches out beyond him. His deck is actually at a higher elevation than ours, and we're also fortunate that we have a street end and a wide open lot. Granted, that may not be a wide open lot forever, but we have view corridors right down Coolidge Avenue. We're not landlocked here, and if we put a little bit of a deck here, all of a sudden we cut off our neighbor's view. That's not the case here. So is there an impact? Certainly, that neighbor is going to see this deck when it's built, but is the impact, and the real test in the land use law is the impact substantial? The question is there a substantial detriment to the public good? And I would argue that there is not. This is a unique situation. You don't deal with this very often, especially on the oceanfront. There's not many of these in town. I think if you drive by there, it's screaming for these decks. The side of that building is just, it's flat, it's blank, and the reason it was built that way is because it's a small unit. They weren't about to give up any square footage of the unit when it got reconstructed, but you have what you have from the approval that was given many years ago. This is an opportunity to make that corner more aesthetically pleasing, more in character with what you expect to see on the oceanfront in Margate, and I think it's done in a fashion that has no impact on anybody.
Mr. Chair, may I pass something around?
Yeah. While you're doing that, Mr. Barnhart,
Yes, sir.
I've got 8 pages of comments on this. When I first, go ahead.
The length of it,
That's what I was
so
about to get to.
from the bulkhead back is 30 feet? Yeah, 30 on the first floor and then 6 foot less on the second floor. So,
When I look at this application on paper without visiting the site, I come up with 2 concerns, 2 objections. One of them is, when it was originally approved, even though it's fee simple, it was looked at as one unit. And you got a 20-foot, which was like 57% variance for the side yards. The second thing was, you have this one man on his property making a decision that affects all the unit owners. Well, then after that, I go and visit the property, and I see the crap landscaping that's on the other side of the building and say how much nicer this would be here. And I think as far as that flat side, I think I'm probably the loudest one saying we do not want flat sides facing the street. So in visiting the property and now hearing this testimony, it's a valuable thing that you come and testify because it completely has answered all my questions and to show that this is a very good plan, in my opinion.
And Mr. Chair?
Yes.
How
Yes.
how is he making a decision for 19 other units?
Because when it was first approved, that landscaping, the percentage of landscaping was based on the entire property.
But he owns it, he's simple.
I understand that, but the variance,
Whatever he wants with that.
no, the variance, he can't do it without a variance.
Without a variance.
Exactly, he can't do it without a variance. And a consideration is that when it was approved as one property. Now he has 19 out of the 20 saying, we like it. That makes all the difference in the world. What if he had 19 out of the 20 saying, we don't like it? Well, then we have to consider it. That's not the case here.
And Mr. Chairman, you took the words right out of my mouth. What I was going to say, we really don't have one man making a decision for everybody because I have 18 signatures plus my client makes 19.
Absolutely.
There's overwhelming support for this.
Absolutely.
I do want to point out 2 more things, Mr. Barnhart, if I may. We didn't talk about the railings. So you mentioned that there could be some impact. Share your microphone. There could be some impact to this neighbor behind us. Are you familiar with what type of railings they're going to be installing if this is approved?
yeah, based on my discussion with the contractor, he's proposing clear glass railings.
Clear glass. And also, I passed out some photographs. They're the same ones that we submitted with our application, except for the very last one. I think this is helpful. It's a photograph if you're standing in front of that neighbor's carport looking at our client's property. Do you see this photograph, Mr. Barnhart?
Yes.
Okay, and based on your understanding of the dimensions of where the side deck would stop, would it be pretty much shielded from the view across the street? In other words, it's not gonna come up to the corner, correct?
Oh, it doesn't come all the way to the corner of the building. It depends on where you're standing, but no, it does not come anywhere near close to the corner of the building. It's, it stops, it stops right here. It's like approximately 50% of the frontage of the building.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Balistrieri, I'll just note, John's aerial, I'll note as A1. The pictures, it looks like you added one, so I'll note the package is A2.
Perfect. And we also have Mr. Weiss's plans, so maybe that could be A1, John's can be A2.
Sure.
And then the photos. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you want me to move the consent forms into evidence. They were submitted along with the application.
I think I saw them, and same with Mr. Weiss's plan. There's nothing really different, but
not.
it's whatever.
Yes.
Whatever you want to do.
Yes.
We'll note.
So that would be the next 19 exhibits,
A4, I guess. We'll call A1 Weiss's plan, A2
Yeah.
the aerial, A3 the photos, and A4 the consent forms.
Correct, perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I think that's important to have it in there. If
As do I,
we're ever
Mr. Chair.
questioned, there's the evidence of what we have.
Yeah, I also have a copy of the covenants and restrictions. I don't think we have to include that. The consent forms should be enough on their own. I just want to thank everyone for all the time and consideration. If you have any questions, we're all here
Just
and we'd be happy
one
to answer.
additional item is the height of that first floor deck, John. Can you address that?
So I was actually, I wasn't sure if you're requesting the variance for the setback of the deck, is that height still actually a variance?
Still in the side yard setback for the first
Right, but
floor.
you're asking for the side yard setback variance.
Right.
So
So
the deck is allowed to be there if the deck is lower.
Correct.
So what I'm saying is, because we're asking for the variance, is the deck height also still a variance? You follow what I'm saying? It's like,
I do, because you're extending the other deck. I think the height is a variance.
okay, all right, so what we're just talking about is, in the ordinance, the decks on the ocean front are allowed to the bulkhead as long as they're no greater than 1 foot 8 inch or 20 inches above BFE. This piece that extends into the ocean, toward the ocean front, is higher than that because it's matching the floors and the decks that were already constructed. So technically, that is a variance.
But John, you raised the bulkhead to meet code.
The bulkhead was reconstructed to meet code.
To meet code.
Yes.
So
And so was the
basically,
building.
that's an incidental because you're going to the bulkhead. Is that
Cor-
right?
It is still going to the bulkhead, correct?
It's 13 feet now, isn't it, for the bulkhead?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't. Yeah.
Okay, so real quick, I want to just go over the variances. So the deck extending towards Coolidge Avenue, how much of a variance are we asking for there?
So the requirement is 9.9 feet.
Right.
We are at 7.9 feet.
Okay, so it's
2
2
feet.
foot.
Correct.
Okay. And then, forget about I said the landscape area, it's very interesting that because the client has to provide the driveway,
Well,
which
they all
is
do.
on his property, he's losing, he's losing that cover. Yeah, okay. And then we just went over the deck height thing, so I think I'm good.
I have no further testimony. I believe we have one member of the public out
All
here
right.
to support us, but
Anything else from the board before I call the public?
I just want to
Go
make a
ahead.
couple comments. It's so nice to see this being built. I've received many, many phone calls over the last 7 years about this project. I've denied probably about 8 renderings, 6 plans. Peter got it right. And the fact that I had not received any phone calls on this application tonight speaks volumes of the communication that the owner presented to the owners, because I know 3 of them would have been here. To me, that makes a world of difference to the application and to the owners, to the complex. And in my opinion, if these variances are granted tonight, that amends the overall site plan. So by default, amended site plan would be approved. There should be a separate vote, or not a separate vote, but that vote should include the amended site plan. I think they've done a great job with this application. And again, the board's mantra has been on corner lots. This is not a corner lot, but it's unique because the front is the beach. It's not a street, but we want the front yards facing the street to look like a front yard, and that's what you're doing here, in my opinion.
We appreciate those comments. I know Mr. and Mrs. Wilk went out of their way to try to be good neighbors, and that means a lot to them. I also think we do have one of those neighbors here tonight, whenever you want to hear from the public as well.
Whenever you're done.
I'm done.
Anyone from the public here? Please come forward, state your name and address, and then wait to be sworn in.
Hi, Mike Garcia, 9704 Atlantic.
Mr. Garcia, do you swear to tell the truth tonight?
Yes, I do.
Thanks, Mike.
Is this one of the 20 units?
Yes, I live in one of the units. So you guys drove by it and saw it. I've lived by it and walked by it for 12, 13 years. So I'm real happy that this is being done. In full disclosure, I've known Ron for over 20 years. So it was serendipity that he was interested in buying that house.
Are
we
you
were looking
moving
at
now?
the house, and I said, geez, looking at the plans, I say, why on earth don't you have decks here? Look at that deck. I was like, geez, oh. So I just think it long overdue. It's been an eyesore for the community, as you know. Everybody just argues with one another. Ron's been there. He's met every single person. He's already suggested a block party, so he's going to be a great addition to the community. So I'm hoping that we can approve him. I'm here to support it. Thank you.
The board enjoys block parties.
On the new deck? Party on the deck?
Anyone else from the audience? Public portion?
After the CO's issued.
Yeah. If there's nothing else from the board, would you please read a motion?
Sure. All right, someone needs to make a motion and a second, then we'll do a roll call vote for the following relief. I think we can group them all as once. There's an amended overall site plan approval, so we'll include that in the motion. And there's a couple C variances. The front yard, the front yard setback to the first floor deck along Coolidge Avenue. The recalculated requirements based on the one other deck is 9.9 feet, and they're at 7.9 feet. The same with the second floor deck, 9.9 feet is required. Along Coolidge, 7.9 feet is proposed, and that's a front yard setback. And then two side yard setback variances, that's the beach side. 8 feet's required. They're at 0, they're at the bulkhead line, but because of the wraparound, that requires variances for the first and second floor deck. And those are considered the two side yards. The deck height, for the beach deck, you're allowed 20, for the first floor beach deck, you're allowed 20 inches above BFE, and they're at 36 inches above BFE. And then total landscaping coverage, 35% is the requirement, and they're at 22%. The only condition, look, one of the conditions is the applicant will comply, as in all resolutions, any representations it made during the course of the hearing. One of the comments was that the railings are going to be clear. Would the board like to see that, or does the applicant have any objection to that being? Is that clearly your intent?
100%.
Clear. I'll note that.
Yeah,
As a condition.
We're fine with that as a condition.
And then we'll just note the standard conditions, subject to any outside approvals that may be required. I know you're on the beach. And then anything else in Mr. McLaren's report unless otherwise addressed.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Tom Collins?
Did a very nice job, all of it. Good presentation. They always say pictures tell 1,000 words. In this case, it really did. The construction of the new bulkhead, the picture that you showed showing all the old decks and the old bulkheads that are so much lower. It's definitely an improvement. It's an improvement for the city. It helps our FEMA ratings for our flood insurance. And it's on a corner. I don't remember that deck behind you ever coming before this board, and I've been on this for a long time. So, and the fact that your landscaping is hampered because of the driveway, which is a very interesting fact. I think the fact that you're on the corner is a great hardship, and that you're on the beach, and you also had to elevate your deck because you have to be at that level. And I also think that what you're doing is a a major improvement. It does meet the C2. You are making a major improvement, not only to Margate, but to your 20-unit complex, which is really going to help them and maybe spur some more development there. So I see nothing wrong with this. I vote in favor.
Craig Palmisano.
The building's been going on for 10 years, I imagine, since the Sandy storm. Very long time. At first, I was a little hesitant on the project at first with the landscaping, but the plan that Peter put through, and John and everybody, you really sold me on it. And the landscaping that's going to be there, I think is going to be beautiful, I'm sure. And the decks will be a great improvement for yourselves. I approve.
Richard Patterson.
When I was initially concerned about landscaping, Mr. Richmond brought up a point that is very important, is that we now have another case of a hardship that's not the applicant's fault, the fact that he has to absorb everyone else's driveway, which takes away from his landscaping. And again, I said I originally had doubts, but again, I think your presentation was great. I love the fact that we don't have a blank wall facing the street. And if you notice now, some of the houses, even along our most beautiful stretch of Atlantic Avenue, are now having houses with blank sides. It's disheartening, let's put it that way, to see what's done when they could put some depth to it. And these decks actually put some depth to there and some features to it, that it's going to be a much better looking house. And maybe it'll prod the 4 other end owners to do something similar. So I'm very happy voting yes on this case.
John Pitts.
Yeah, the landscape is an issue for me. Any reduction in landscape in the town, I think, is to the public detriment. As far as the slab side, I think with some creative materials and design elements, we could eliminate that slab side look. I vote no.
Michael Cristaldi.
Start with the decks that you're talking about interfering with. That thing has been unusable for 10 years, so I don't even think that was in the question tonight. I think it's a project that this building needed, so I vote yes.
Jim Galantino.
It removes a severe repetitive loss property from the City of Margate Sierra Community Rating System rules, which is a violation underneath FEMA. Property's been flooded so many times. And it was out of commission for longer than 10 years. It was Dr. Evans owned it, and he was a collector of many things. If you remember his old car and the trash he kept underneath the building. It's been dilapidated. It's been an eyesore for a long time, and I've been after the guy for years to fix it up, and I'm just glad to see this building built, and I approve it.
Margaret Gubernalty.
This certainly is a unique situation. It's a unique beachfront property as well. I agree with the other board members. It is certainly an aesthetic improvement from what it was. The benefits outweigh the detriments. I see no negative impact to the public good or to our plan zone, and I approve the application. Good luck.
Remy Pelosi.
I concur with the other board members who vote yes to approve. I think this is a great project, so I agree, yes.
And Michael Richmond.
I agree with the other board members. I'm going to vote yes.
The application is approved with 8 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you all very much. Do we need to get some forms over?
Last application is Gary and Nancy Valuric, 111 and 113 South Rumson Avenue, Block 18, Lot 6 and 8, located in the S40 zoning district, seeking C variance relief for front yard pool and pool fence, width of curb cut, and possibly others, in order to construct a new single-family home. Taxes and water payments are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Before you start, I'm going to call a 5-minute break. All right, the meeting's called back in order. Our last case is, I'll read it again, Gary and Nancy Valoric, 111 and 113 South Rumson Avenue, Block 18, Lot 6 and 8, located in the S40 zoning district, seeking C variance relief for front yard pool and pool fence, width of curb cut, and possibly others in order to construct a new single-family home. Taxes and water payments are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Mr. McLarnon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. The report is based on the application of Gary and Nancy Valoric, 111 South Rumson Avenue. As the chairman pointed out, Block 18, lots 6 and 8. The lots, Chris, these lots going to be consolidated?
Will be consolidated, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So the new lot number will be based on the tax assessor's recommendation. Background, as the chairman described, is seeking relief to construct a new flood-compliant home on the beach block of South Rumson Avenue, closer to the beach where the house exists now. 3 variances are being requested and are outlined below. The building will span 2 properties which need to be consolidated, and they will. And that will be a condition of approval. Prior to any building permits or zoning permits being issued, they have to be consolidated. Zoning chart on page 2. Basically, it's nearly a by right application. Documents reviewed, section 2, page 3. Plans reviewed and received on page 4. Variances required are as follows. Front yard setback to the fence, whereas the minimum required setback based on the prevailing setback is 18.1 feet, and 9.2 feet is proposed. Again, by definition, the front yard setback begins at the face of the building. Curb cuts width, whereas the maximum width of a curb cut for a property of this width is 18 feet, and 30 feet is proposed. No street trees are required on the beach block. The existing curb cut shall be removed as a condition of approval. All landscape requirements shall be met, and I believe they are. Just a couple comments about the ground floor in regard to anything below DFE. It seems like there's a lot of walls in the ground floor, a lot of compartment areas, rooms. The renderings indicate that looks like a bedroom down there.
There's a gym, there's a television room, there's a gym.
But they are subject to compliance with the flood damage prevention ordinance and the non-conversion agreement. Just want to put that on the record. And that concludes my report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. Members of the board, my name is Chris Valentin. I represent Gary and Nancy Valoric with respect to their property on Rumson Avenue Beach Block, Lot 6 and 8. Lot 6 is a 100-foot lot where their current home is sited. Lot 8, they were fortunate enough to be able to buy the lot, 50-foot lot, immediately to their south, which is now vacant, and propose on that property to essentially slide the site of the house over to now be on Lot 6 and a portion on Lot 8. There'll be a 50-foot lot left on the Atlantic Avenue side. The property is Block 18, it's lots 8 and 6, as I said, 113 South Rumson in the S40 zoning district. With this, I mean, the Valorics have been on the Rumson Avenue Beach Block now for 25 years in the house that Todd designed in 97. And we were here before this board, and the board nicely granted 2 of the variances we're requesting tonight. With that application, the pool was in the front yard of the property. It has been moved in this circumstance to the side yard, so there's no variance for the front pool in the front yard, just the pool fence for a portion of the property, just the fence, not the pool.
You're not lifting the house, right? This is a whole new
Whole
building.
new house, yeah, one sec. And we are attempting to replicate, and I know we're not entitled to it, but there's a 30-foot curb cut now to accommodate additional parking on site. We are requesting that again as a variance. Mr. Patterson, you are correct. The initial proposal was to lift the existing home and slide it over to closer to the beach and leave the 50-foot lot. That number came back crazy. The number to do that.
To do it?
that was
Yeah.
Crazy. The plan stopped, and it was more cost-effective for Todd and Bill to design and build a new home easily. With that having been said, Mr. Valoric, who's here tonight, would like to request that the pool location dictates where the fence is. It's a 5-foot fence in a portion of the front yard. Now, it's a portion of the front yard for the principal structure. The fence meets the setback for where a deck would be allowed to be. In other words, where the fence location is, it's 9 feet back. Had the house been designed differently, there could be triple step decks all the way up there. But the decision was not to have those decks, not to have those above surface outdoor living spaces, but to have the pool on the side, which dictates the fence being on the deck or porch setback. So it's not completely in the front yard, it's in the front yard of the principal building. But it meets the deck and porch setback. It still leaves 9 feet of open space to the edge of grass. And you'll see from the plan, Todd will tell you, that here, the property line is somewhat inside of the edge of sidewalk. So the appearance of 9 feet on the plan turns into about 10 feet from the sidewalk. That's one variance. The second variance is to request a 30-foot curb cut. Now, everybody's like, geez, 30-foot curb cut, you guys are crazy. 30-foot curb cut is being requested solely because we are providing additional off-street parking in that there is no on-street parking in the beach block.
Just on
there-
Rumson Avenue?
Yes.
Every other beach block can have parking.
Is Rumson Avenue one of them?
You said this only applies to Rumson Avenue, that there's no street parking?
Oh, no. I said there's no on-street parking on Rumson Avenue.
And I said only Rumson Avenue? That goes from Fredericksburg to Coolidge.
The prohibition of on-street?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't say it's exclusive to Rumson.
Well, I asked that question, and you did, so you misunderstood my question.
I apologize. There is no beach block parking on Rumson or any of the other streets
Right.
in Margate. The proposal is to have 7 off-street parking spaces, 3 on the side of the house, 2 in the driveway, 2 in the garage. That prevents, obviously, everybody any visitors to that house taking up spots on the streets on Atlantic Avenue where everybody gets pissed off because you can't even go to the beach in the morning because the people from the beach block are parked on Atlantic Avenue. The idea is to provide additional parking. The 30 feet accommodates those 3 entries onto the property. Now, should the property remain 2 lots or had it remained 2 lots, you guys know 2 18-foot curb cuts would be permitted for 36 feet of curb cut. And then another 18 on the 50-foot lot that remains. That's with this proposal, not going to happen. It's reduced to 30 feet total rather than 36. And I know you're going to say, well, it's not going to be 2 50-foot lots because it's proposed to be 1 big lot. I understand
Didn't you
that.
say there was a separate 50-foot lot on the Atlantic
We're
Avenue
going
side?
to leave a 50-foot lot on the Atlantic Avenue side.
A separate lot that could be sold at some
Oh,
point,
sure, yes.
with an 18-foot driveway.
No, there's no proposal right now to do anything with it. Right now, it's going to remain part of their property.
But you will have an empty lot there that could be sold, and you could put an 18-foot driveway in if it were sold.
That's right. There could be 3 18-foot driveways lined up on those 3 lots for sure.
Right.
Instead, with this proposal, we were able to reduce
To
that.
2,
We're able to reduce
to
it
2 lots.
by 6 feet. I'm just saying, Rich, if there were 3 lots, it would be 3 18s.
Right.
By consolidating this lot, we're asking not for 36, but for 30. So a reduction in what could be there, and I know that's,
And my point is, you got 30 plus the potential 18 on the lot that's separate.
well, that's a viable lot. I mean, the point is.
I don't mind that 18-foot.
Right, the point is, there could be 3 houses. The Villers are building 1 house on 2 lots. That's a bonus on the beach block.
That's a bonus.
And a 2-story house as well. And Todd can address the at-grade comments. But like I said, the fence is only along a portion of the front yard. It is not a solid black wall like on Barclay and Atlantic. It will be an open fence. It doesn't stretch across the whole property. It's just a portion of the property. And it meets the deck setback, which I think is very important. Because as I said, you could have multi-level front yard decks there, much more imposing than a 5-foot pool fence with the pool being moved inside yard, yes.
Chris, if you move the pool back 8 feet towards the back of the house, you can move the fence back too, correct?
Sure you could.
Well, the pool's all the way brought forward there. And the patios and behind the
That
pool.
It leaves you some backyard, it leaves you some outside
You could have the
recreation.
patio in front of the pool and the pool farther
That's
back.
not how the plan's laid out.
I know.
It's a plan that where we're left with a conforming rear yard setback, which is actually larger than is required. The side yards are 32 feet, where only 22 feet is required. Both coverages are under both. The lot
How
coverage is.
big's the lot? How many square feet?
What's that?
How big is the lot?
So it's 100 by 50, right?
80.
Oh, no, it's
8,000
8,000 square feet.
8,000 square feet.
Right.
And on 8,000 square feet, you couldn't design a house. Not this house is the house you want, but you couldn't design a house that the pool is back further and you don't
Of
have
course you
these
could.
variances?
Of course you could. Absolutely. But when you're building a house that's completely compatible with zoning ordinance and is over in landscaping on both the front yard and the entire lot, you look at the benefits of the project as a whole. The benefits of the project as a whole, it's one house on 2 lots. It's 2 stories. All the zoning criteria is well within or well under what's required. The idea is this a better proposal for the block with 5-foot fence
Right.
at the next setback? Of course it can be done.
So the threat is that we'll put 3 houses
No,
there
it's
if
not,
we don't
it's not a
approve
threat,
that?
it's a
You want a double lot?
threat, it's a justification.
I understand.
That's all.
I have 2 people I always consider mentors to me on the planning board, which was Clem Wesleski and Adio Santori. Not only them,
Adio
but-
was a mentor of yours?
huh?
Adio was a mentor?
He taught me how to drive, if you ever drove with him.
Adio was the one who said, when there's nobody behind you, don't put your blinker on. Save the energy.
He
Save the
was
light bulb.
the scariest guy I ever had. But then the third person is Tom Collins, who approached me 3 weeks ago, and he basically quoted those 2 and saying, why would we ever grant any variance on a completely empty lot? There should be no variances. That meant a lot to me, coming from Tom, coming from Clem, coming from the other one. I just see a giant lot here that you have so much you could do with without having any variances, other than
but we tried
it benefits me. It benefits one property owner. It doesn't benefit anybody else.
Right. I mean, this board, these are almost aesthetic type vision, not the curb cut put aside, but the fence in a portion of the front yard, 10 feet off the 10 feet off the sidewalk?
Yes.
I mean, is that really a substantial detriment to the public? Substantial?
The threat is,
it really
this is the 3rd or 4th one that's come in now because we happen to approve one fence that I opposed, but now people are saying, well, you gave him a front yard.
But that fence,
Everything stands on its own, but this
respectfully,
is
right,
what happens.
respectfully, that fence is there now, 25 feet over.
Look, you have a 1-foot setback, rear yard setback in the house now.
I'm sorry?
1 foot. You have a 1-foot rear yard setback. You don't, but what if you did?
Okay.
Are you gonna rebuild the house and say, well, I had a 1-foot setback before,
course
so
not.
I can have a 1-foot?
Of course not. It's not even close to being the same type of analysis.
You have from Fredericksburg to what's the other one? Coolidge Avenue. Everybody in the town is subject to the same tough parking on the beach block. Why does this case get a special 30-foot driveway when everybody else is stuck following the rules?
Because we
There's
have the
nothing
ability to
unique
take 7
about
cars off the street. We have the ability to lighten up the impact of the parking on Atlantic Avenue by taking 7 cars off the street.
Well, why doesn't everybody on all the beach blocks get 30 feet to take even more cars?
Because everybody doesn't have a double lot and doesn't come in and request it.
Oh, there's lots of double lots on.
They don't come in and request it. We have the opportunity to do that. Look, I'm surprised of the outlook on this case when somebody comes in with a 2-story house on a double lot and asks for a 5-foot fence in a portion of the front yard and the resistance that I'm getting. It's disappointing.
Well, you haven't presented any testimony yet.
I have not. I'm just.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
Trying
ahead.
to cue it up. Yes.
How many parking spots are required?
4. 5 or 4? 4 are required. Todd, please, I'm going to piss everybody off.
So Chris, just to be clear here, when I said my comment, which I did say, Rich quoted me exactly, we were talking about houses. And why would we give side yard variances for houses, which I'm very much against. In this case here, if you're telling me you're gonna keep the exact fence that's there, that makes a big difference, okay? Number 2, you're on a beach block where you can't park. I mean, we're talking about a fence and a driveway. And we're working harder on this and we do
As the
on some
attorney, you thought it was
houses.
reasonable?
I think what Tom's saying is it's,
I won't do that. I know better. I know better.
It's the location. If this was somewhere in the middle of the block where it's crammed in, I'd say no. But you're in a beach block, you can't park. It's a wide street. you're by the beach, and look at what he's doing. Look at the landscape, my God. I
And
mean,
he
you must
has
be in love with
8,000
this.
square feet, so he could do it just as beautiful and not get variances. And you have 700
But the
other
variance
houses in
for
the same.
parking
Is de
it
minimis.
doesn't, who is it, who,
It's almost
what's the
like you guys
detriment
are
to who? We
saying
can't park on the
you
street
can't get
anyway.
any
So he
driveway
takes all the
variances.
cars for his house and takes them off the street. So great, so let's give everyone else beach block variances. Honestly, who cares? We can't park.
Because,
So-
right, let's give them,
But-
well then
like-
let's get
but
together
why-
as a
but
board.
why
Let's
debate
get
it?
together as a
Because-
board, talk to Roger, and let's come up with a new rule for the beach block that they can have.
Right.
But at this point,
It is a
700
variance.
other houses are subject to this rule. Every one of them would like a 30-foot driveway. So why is this house different than them?
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying I don't think this is a variance worth debating over.
Rich, I've never come in front of this board and asked for a variance for a setback for a new home on a single-family home lot.
I was making a point.
And we're having, like, probably 15 years.
I was
wouldn't
making a
take
point
the
that
case.
what you have now, once you tear it down, you are now starting with a clean slate.
Understood.
That was the point.
I understand. Todd,
right.
for me to talk.
Can I say something? As we move forward and the parking becomes more and more and more crowded, there's a possibility that maybe one side of the beach block might open up for parking. Ventnor houses both sides to the beach block. Atlantic City, both sides to the beach block. And Ventnor stops at Fredericksburg Avenue.
But that,
So it's someday I'm saying it could open up.
You know,
We
in our
need
life-
parking so
coulda, shoulda,
much.
woulda. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
but-
In our lifetime,
Why don't you complete,
it's been proposed.
Yeah, we should
complete your testimony and
Yeah.
then we'll ask questions.
Yes,
start
Todd,
your
please.
testimony.
Todd, you're sworn.
Mr. Miller, just your name and address for the record, please.
Todd Miller, QMA Architect, 16 South Dorset Avenue, Ventnor City.
Okay, and, yeah, if you can use the microphone too, but please raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth?
I do.
And Mr. Miller's credentials, I assume, are accepted, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Todd, you prepared the plans that were submitted to the board for their consideration.
Yes, I did.
And you were involved with the first house the Florks live in now.
Yes.
Would you give the board the benefit of some of the background with respect to this project, the existing house, and what now is proposed?
So there are, for lack of a better word, three 50-foot lots by 80 feet deep on Rumson Avenue. The current 6,000 square foot residence sits on two of those lots. They're actually been consolidated into one. And what we're proposing to do is consolidate the third lot into one big lot and then subdivide off the 50-foot lot on the bay side, Atlantic Avenue side. So all the calculations that you see in our drawings are based upon just the two lots, first of all. So including the prevailing setbacks, lot coverage, and everything else. So the existing house is 3 stories or 2.5 stories and 6,000 square foot. It was a complying structure when it was built, and it got hit pretty hard by Hurricane Sandy.
When you say compliant, there were variances.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was FEMA compliant when it was built, yes. There were actually, we came to this board, there were 2 variances. There was a variance for the fence at the prevailing porch setback line and a variance for the 30-foot apron.
Those are the same variances we're asking for tonight?
Yes.
Right, and I'm not disputing anything here, but when was that?
97, 98?
07, I believe,
Oh,
about 15 years ago.
When the house was rebuilt, okay. I'm sorry, early.
About
2000.
15 years ago, yeah. So that was a 2.5-story, 6,000 square feet house. The house that we're proposing is a 2-story, 4,800 square feet house. So even though it's on the same size lot, we're actually building 1,200 square feet less of habitable space than we're permitted. And there's a lot of other, so the house itself is completely complying with all your bulk regulations in terms of setbacks and lot coverage and building coverage and landscape coverage and prevailing setbacks and building height, the whole list. There are the 2 variances that we talked about. But before we get to the variances, so we have a front yard prevailing setback of 18.1 feet, or about 18 feet 2 inches. Our garage is set at 18 foot 6, and that's the closest we come to the front property line. At the entry, we're about 22 feet.
Todd, take them through that on the plan, please, and point to the sections that step back as you go toward the beach.
Sure. So at the garage, we're just a couple inches larger than complying. At the entry, we're 22 feet, where 18 feet is required. Setback. At the cabana, we're about 29 feet. And at the storage area gym, we're about 44 feet.
That's a 44-foot front yard setback closest to the beach?
Yes.
What was the
Front yard
last one?
setback steps back.
The storage area, Jim, was how much?
About 44 feet from the property line.
And with those sections of building you testified to, they actually, each one steps back in the front yard setback as you go toward the water.
Yes, that is correct. This is a pretty large house, and so we modulated the exterior in order to keep the massing of the house down. We all have seen those houses with, and you were talking about it earlier, with these very flat facades and how unattractive they are. We were looking to make a very attractive house. There's also something very unique about this lot in that it is one off the beach, but the house across the street, the bulkhead, steps back about 50 feet. I don't know exactly how much it is. And that provides us with a very wonderful, about a 45-degree angle view corridor to the ocean. So the house was designed to take advantage of all those ocean views, and it also provides lots of light and air and lots of setbacks from the street. The rear yard setback is just a couple inches larger than complying. The Atlantic Avenue setback, we set at 12 feet because we wanted to put parking in there. 10 feet is required. And the other side is 22 feet, depending on how you measure it. It's 22 feet to the building. We have a balcony that projects 6 feet into that. Technically, that's part of a building because it's a side yard balcony, so it might be 14 feet. But in either case, it's well above what is required. And then, of course, the house continues to step back on the side yard as well. So we're...
So the side yard on the beach side is then what?
Yeah, so we're, say if we're measuring to the balcony, we're 14 feet here, we're about 35 feet here, and about 50 feet here at the entry. So the house really sets way back from both the Rumson Avenue Street and the ocean side yard as well. So the house complies with all the bulk requirements, is actually smaller than is required, and we have substantially larger setbacks.
One thing we didn't touch on, the landscaping on the lot and the front yard, well compliant?
Yes, we comply with the front yard landscape requirement, and we're a little bit over on the total lot landscape requirement. So if we want to jump right into the apron variance, and very good comments that you made at the beginning of the meeting about taking parking off the street and reducing landscaping. So in this particular instance, we're not taking parking off the street because it's not permitted, and we have excess landscaping. We're probably losing, I don't know how large the governorship is here, but if it's 3 feet, so 3 times 12, that would be 36. We're about 136 feet over in landscaping, so hopefully that would be a wash.
What you're saying is the governor strip the 18 feet of governor strip that is not being constructed because of the request for the curb cut.
Right, so if we had an 18-foot apron.
18 times 3 or 20 or 54?
Exactly, if we had an 18-foot
Well, even without
apron,
that strip, you have plenty of landscape.
we have plenty of landscape
Yeah.
coverage. Now, that strip isn't included in our coverage, but I'm just
Right.
saying that we have enough overage
Right.
to,
Cover that deficiency.
Right.
if you,
The driveway does not affect the landscape.
right, but if you were offsetting that loss on the curb, we have enough to do that.
Can I,
Yes.
do you want to, I have a question about,
Sure.
because you're talking about the setback, and then you have that last one. When I'm looking at this picture, is that glass windows on the bottom? Is that, so you,
Yeah, they're Anderson patio doors.
right. And you have a gym in one room, and you have a TV room.
Where's the gym? I don't see a gym.
I see a treadmill.
And in the picture you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. I was looking at the actual plan, not the rendering.
Well, but if you look at the plan, you see rooms for all of these things.
I get
It is not storage, it is not parking, it is not access.
When you look at the floor plan, there's no gym proposed in the floor plan.
There's a room for it. You have so many rooms, like Roger said. Why are all these rooms down underneath?
Don't you need the bottom of the house?
Huh?
Don't you need, the house has to have the bottom, right? It's required to be up so high, so you need a space underneath it. You're objecting to the walls.
I have never seen as many rooms as, of course, this is a much bigger house, designed for living space. Now, you're not going to, you're going to sign,
It's not
you're,
storage space.
you are going to sign that it's not living space. Absolutely. I'm not saying you're lying, but here you show us a picture of living space. You have so many rooms in there that could be living space. I just want, why you do, because you're one of the best architects that come in here. Way better than Peter Weiss. Oh, I'm sorry.
Every once in a while, the CAD machine just gets away from them.
I just wondered, when I saw it and saw your name, because I know your quality of your work, I thought, why would you draw something like this?
So
to bring
all
to
the, all the finishes down there will be completely 100% compliant with FEMA's bulletin TB2, where they permit certain materials to be finished down in these areas. It'll be 100% compliant, and I'm sure Mr. Galantino over there will make sure we're 100% compliant.
Todd, the concern is that we're showing dressers and vanities.
You're showing living
treadmill.
space down there, yeah.
That's not what is proposed, is that fair? And look at the
It is,
rendering.
it is not to be habitable space.
Understood. Condition of approval, sign the,
Well, like I said, you have to sign that anyway, that you will not convert it.
Can I ask something?
yeah,
So,
Microphone.
like Pembroke Avenue Beach Block and like Knight Avenue Beach Block. We're building two houses on Pembroke. They tore down one big house and are building two. They each have 18-foot lots. Knight Avenue Beach Block, same thing. Took down that big corner house, both have 18-foot driveways. So conceivably, this could have been somebody could have come in and put up 3 houses for sale. He just happened to buy the lot next door, so he has 150 feet.
Correct.
So if a developer came in, they could have put 3 houses up there with 3
Tom
18-foot
comes in and
driveways.
says, hey, I'll give you a crazy amount of money
He'll
for your 3
sell
lots.
it.
This-
Yes,
He'll
the answer
sell
is
it
yes.
and we'll get 3 18-foot
And
driveways.
we are speculating, but the answer is yes.
This board has never,
That's all I wanna know.
this board has never objected to legal driveways.
That's all
They
I
have
wanted
every
to
right to put 3 houses in there. God bless them, let it do it. So now you're gonna end up with a 30-foot driveway and an 18-foot driveway instead of 3
18,
18-foot
18,
driveways.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Todd,
18, 18, and
the
18.
comparison of the existing home and the relief requesting, not that it's required to follow that, but is it, the existing home has a 30-foot curb cut?
Yes, it is.
That was approved when the house was approved?
Yes.
And same with the front yard fence was also at the deck setback as it is now?
Yes, it was.
In
Now
that
this-
case, I believe the pool was in the front yard previously, and they got a variance for that. The pool has been moved to the side.
Yes.
Now, my previous question is, when did this happen? It was 2007. Since 2007, we have had Hurricane Sandy, which changed things. We had a completely new master plan in 2016, and we have just recently changed the rules for parking.
Mr. Patterson, this
So
is
this is
Pat, I'm just
totally
doing my
different than,
presentation.
this is totally different than what happened in
Patterson, I'm just
2007.
doing a presentation. It's not tit for tat. You don't have to respond
Yeah.
every time I make a point. You don't have to-
Okay,
you don't-
I'll
you
shut up
gotta-
until you're done.
Todd,
So,
go ahead.
As I understand, one of the reasons we come to a board like this is to discuss what the goals of the zoning rules and regulations are, and to find a solution that meets the goals. If we met the letter of the law, we wouldn't be here, but to meet the goals of the zoning ordinance. And I think when the zoning ordinance was written, and it's a good ordinance, don't get me wrong, and I think the amendments that were just passed are also really good, but I don't know, I wasn't present when the discussion was, when they were writing this, but was there any discussion of how you deal with lots that are larger than normal, than the standard lot?
Well, there wasn't, but there was a case on Clarendon Avenue where they wanted to park a motorhome on the side, and I think it was a Sosh case. and they wanted a extra driveway so they could get in and get things off the street. It was completely shot down.
Well, that
I would've
motorhome's
voted no on
different.
that, too.
Huh?
I would've said no to that, too.
The Valorics, maybe we'll step back. a
Forget the
little bit.
motorhome, that's a side issue, but
Gary and Nancy Valoric, they have a large family. It's the two of them who occupy the house mostly, but they have 3 adult children that are married. Are they all married, Gary? 2 are married, hopefully the third one too, and they have lots of grandchildren. So there'll be times when there'll be many adults, 7 or 8 adults down at the shore. In a perfect world, they all carpool, but we know we don't live in a perfect world. So it's very possible there'll be a lot more than 4 cars at this particular location.
you are describing the situation for 90% of the houses on the beach block. What makes this house different that would be unique? that
Because this
we
house
should give
uses
a variance?
a substantial amount of their lot to take cars off the street. That's all. I can't say that any more times.
We have 100 feet of frontage where we're typically dealing with 50. And we have the ability to do this without asking for any variances with the exception of the apron. And as those very good suggestions you made before the start of the meeting, we are not removing any street side parking.
So actually, the conditions on that side of Rumson Avenue on the beach block would be exactly the same as they are now.
Sure.
Right, so it wouldn't create an alien situation or a situation that anybody's not used to seeing.
And I think having 3 extra cars off of Margate Street so that other people could park on Atlantic Avenue or on south side of Rumson more than offsets the extra 12 feet.
Todd, talk to me about the variances and justification under the Land Use Act.
So let's talk about the fence.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Fence. So we have set the pool enclosure at the front porch setback.
I'm sorry.
With the pool fence enclosure at the front porch setback line. The pool ordinance specifically says no fences in that location. However, as the previous application that was just heard, they had a 6 or 7 foot high porch that was fully enclosed at that porch setback line. Now that's a porch and not a pool fence, so that is permitted, but a lower semi-transparent pool fence is not permitted. And it seems like that maybe there's something that needs to be adjusted there. Either the porches need to be open underneath, or maybe a fence at the porch setback line is a reasonable place to put it, because we're allowed to build literally a 40-foot high porch on that line, but we can't build a 5-foot transparent fence on that line.
And you realize the board has no problem with that? If you want to build a 40-foot porch that's allowed, go
Yes.
ahead.
But what's better for the city? What's better for the block?
I'm just pointing out the sort of the contradictions in the ordinance. And that is why we're here, is to talk about these contradictions and to discuss if having a 5-foot open fence is okay in a place where we could have a 40-foot high porch. We know it's not permitted, but those are the things that this board is designed to address.
If it was unique, and it is not unique, it applies to every house on the beach block.
Yes. Yes.
So, again,
Well,
why
every
is
house is
this house special? Huh?
What makes this house special is the fact that all this board in this town talks about is density. All this board in this town talks about is 2.5-story houses. All this board talks about, and the city talks about, is no landscaping. We're bringing you a project that's 2 stories, okay? 2 stories, that is 1 house on 2 lots, addressing a density issue, in compliance with no setbacks, no landscape. You look at the project as a whole, and can you justify the fence? Can you justify the fence against the entire project, and what's better for the block? What's better for the city? This is. This.
In that same vein, you have a giant 8,000 square foot lot where you could do the same beautiful house and not have any variances and still satisfy and
This board's here to serve a function.
and
This board is here to serve a function and to look at projects that are better than other projects. we're allowed to bring this before the board. That's why you're here.
Yeah, sure.
And the board has to look at it like, would you rather see this house with the concessions that are there, the 2 stories, the one house on 2 lots, the 32-foot side yard setbacks? I mean, the side yard setback on the beach side meets almost the requirement for both sides, the 22 feet. Okay? So you have to open up your mind a little bit and look at that. I'm talking to everybody. Is this a better proposal? Is this a better proposal? Is this a better plan? Then what could be done alternatively? That's all.
Testimony?
I'm sorry. Todd, talk about the
So
variances.
there's the positive and negative criteria, and then there's a hardship variance. Obviously, this is not a hardship variance, right? And I think that is what you're referring to. We are not coming here to the board with a street on 2 sides and things of that nature. We have an oversized lot, and we have mostly complied we have complied with almost all of the strict rules and regulations of the zoning ordinance, with the exception of 2 things, and that's the apron and our pool fence. And we believe that in comparison to other designs that would have a much more negative impact on Rumson Avenue, the street, and the neighbors, that this is actually a better solution than what we could do. Yes, we could not do this, but the design is a good design for the street.
Todd, in that regard, does this design provide and enhance light, air, and open space from what otherwise could be on the property?
Absolutely. With these significantly enlarged setbacks from what is required, there is much more light and open space on the street and for the neighbors' homes.
How about the reduction?
Go ahead.
We're giving the testimony.
Go ahead.
How about the reduction in imposition or imposing or density on the street, the way you've stepped the house back significantly as it moves toward the ocean?
Well, yeah, certainly. We've all seen and talked about those streets in Margate that have just walls of houses. They all line up. They're kind of massive. The setbacks are small, and they create kind of this urban feel. In this particular location, and on this particular street as well, we have provided much larger setbacks to try to open up the light and air and the view, not only to this property, but to the street as well.
But, Mr. Miller.
Can I just finish the variance
Yeah,
justification?
go ahead. I'm
Thank
sorry. Go ahead.
Todd, and I want to address Mr. Pompano's comment. The pool is located toward the front of the house and the side because it works with the rest of the house. There are decks and patios adjacent to it versus pushing it back into that corner where there'd be no outside space to appreciate.
Yes, actually, the pool is set back as far as it can and still comply with the setback, the 3-foot setback from any building element above it. So that's as far back as the pool can go with this particular plan.
I don't understand that.
The pool
could go back further.
Well, there is a patio
Yeah,
up
but
above.
I mean, the pool could go back further.
But then it wouldn't.
There's no 3-foot there's no piers or anything at that patio, so what you're kind of saying, you just said the pool can't go back any further, but it can.
Well, we would be asking for a variance from the rule that says that the pool cannot be any closer than 3 feet
Well, I'm
to
looking at the site plan, and you have 3 foot on the side between the pool and the thing, right?
Yeah, there's a dotted line there for a patio that projects out. And we have to be 3 feet from.
All right, so I'm not picking that up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, maybe that's not clear.
It's designed to work with the patio that's next to it, the covered patio next to it.
Yes.
Right? It's also designed in a way, the way the house steps back, to get the maximum sun throughout the day, so it's not stuck in a corner up against the side of the house.
Exactly, that is the sunniest part of the lot.
Board members, quiet.
The house also obviously complies, as every house would have to, complies with the new federal
I can't put
state
you anywhere.
flood management controls.
Of course it does, yes.
And works toward addressing appropriate population densities by having one house on 2 building lots.
Yes.
Now, do you think the variances can be granted without substantial detriment to public good?
Absolutely, for the reasons that we've talked about, and I'm not sure I should enumerate again.
And in fact, that if the public good of Rumson Avenue would be here for sure, I'll withdraw that. And do you think the variance can be granted without substantial impact upon the zoning ordinance and zoning controls.
Yes, in fact, let me go back and talk about it, yes, but by giving us a wider street apron, we take 3 more cars off of the already crowded summertime Margate streets, and I think that's a benefit not only to Rumson Avenue, since there's no parking, but to the entire nearby community where we're all sort of hunting and driving around for a parking space.
Well, part of that could be taken care of by putting more cars under the house, but you have all those rooms under the house. And then you,
Variance for that. There's no relief being requested for that,
for what?
front of the house.
He's talking about how many more cars he can put on a lot, so he opened it,
But you keep talking about rooms under there.
yeah,
So what?
because it's blocking the garage from taking more cars.
You want to design it?
Do I want to design it?
Yeah.
No, but one of those things that the board looks at in every case, are there alternatives here? Or would it be a hardship that we're stuck on this lot, we can't do this or that? There are alternatives here, and I can,
Mr. Patterson,
99%,
You're
wait
speaking for
1
yourself.
minute.
You're not speaking for the board.
You
And-
can, 1 second. If this was turned down, you're gonna end up with a house there with all these giant setbacks. It's gonna be a beautiful house. It's gonna enhance Rumson Avenue if you take a very easily viable alternative to this. It's not like this is the only place I can put it. I'd be very sympathetic if this is the only thing I can put here. But you have 8,000 feet of empty
But
space.
you're clearly not evaluating this the proper way. You're saying you have a clean lot, you should do it, you should not get any variances, period, end of story.
Because you don't need it, and because there's alternatives to these variances.
I understand that. But
You put more cars under the house, how are you gonna get to it? We need a more driveway then.
What?
How you,
No, you
why?
don't.
No, you would knock out the rooms.
No, you
Yeah.
don't.
But you still, you have your foyer, you can't get rid of that, you'd have to be on both sides. Look at your plan.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
And with respect to the pool fence, we believe that because you could put a enclosed porch structure in this location, that would be substantially higher and substantially have a more impact on the sidewalk and the street, that having a transparent 5-foot fence is actually an improvement to what could be done.
Todd, an alternative design could bring a porch right out to that line where the fence is. Am I right? Could bring a deck right up to that line where the fence is.
We could have
Even with this house.
We could have a 78-foot long porch that's 3 stories tall.
On this house, well, no, on this house, you could still do that. You could bring a deck out to that fence line.
Sure.
And is that what your clients would like?
That's good. No, that's not
I'm
what.
sorry,
that's not what the
I
clients
withdraw
would
the
like. The clients
question.
would like this.
I withdraw the question.
In design, and I like to think I'm a pretty good designer.
You're a very good
I'm not a
designer.
star architect, but we really try hard. There's always these trade-offs that we look for in terms of how we design our buildings. And I've been coming to this board for 40 years. Started when I worked with Pete at Bob Johnson's office. And I've always come here with what I think are realistic and practical solutions. I've never come here and asked for 4 stories when we're only allowed 3, or asked for, huge setbacks variances or lot coverage variances. We've only come here with what we think are very minor, and I would call it a technical variance, because we meet the intent of what I think you're looking for in the ordinance, which I think is really important. That's what government bodies do. That's what this body does. It creates the guidelines that we all work with. But the board here is charged with assessing individual items of that board to see if a proposal is just as good as what the rules are. Not the same, because then you wouldn't need a board, right? But to compare what we've done to what could be done and see if that is a good solution. And now, that's only something that you guys can do. I can't do that, but that's what the board is. Is this as good as something that could be built here that complies with the rules and regulations? I would suggest this is a lot better, but that's a determination that you guys have to make. And gals, by the way, I'm sorry.
One other another thing, there was about a 2 to 3 year struggle between the city commission, the planning board, and public input about front yard fences. It went back, it went forth, it was in, and it was out, and twice it was rejected that we do not want front yard fences. That was since your 2007 approval. So things have changed.
But there have been front yard fences granted under the same circumstances.
But
I can
I'd
take
I'd like to step back
where I used
because
to live.
I can too.
each proposal is unique.
Yes.
So the question isn't whether you've done it before, but whether it makes sense here on this application. Not that it's a variance, because we know it's a variance. The question is this a good solution that doesn't negatively impact the neighbors or anything else?
Todd, I think the board wants to vote. I think.
Oh, I want to hear the rest of the testimony.
I don't have any, Gary wants to speak.
Did you have any other questions for me?
Mr. Valoric?
Sure.
Gary Valoric.
Mr. Valoric, just state your name and we know your address. State your name for the record, please.
Gary Valoric.
And please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
First, I want to thank you all for your time and the attention for looking at our proposed plan. I know there's a lot of things that you need to consider. I want you to know that I spent the last 2.5 years, maybe longer, trying to decide what to do with the space and the land and what my options are. And so we finally came to this conclusion that this is the best solution for our family, including how we live, including how we park cars. And, we spent a lot of time and energy figuring out if we could lift our house to be compliant, because we were very adversely affected by Sandy and some other storms. And so, the first thing we tried to do was just lift our house. But by the time you lift your house and get everything else to go with it, it just was not cost effective. So this was not my first option or my first desire to build a house. But this is the way we do live our life, which is, it's not practical for us to bring cars in and out of the driveway and every time somebody wants to move it. And it's not like I don't already have a fence in front of my house that's, what I'm looking to put this even further back. And it's not like I don't already have a 30-foot cut on my driveway, and I'm asking for something different. Because if I don't get what makes something practical to me, I'm going to have no alternative than to just stick with what I have and renovate it and make the best of it. So I would really appreciate it if you would consider what we presented to you. And I think that the city knows we've been very good residents. We've taken great care of our houses, and we've never been anything but good citizens, which we would continue to be. So I appreciate all your time and effort, and thank you.
Thanks, Gary. That's all. Thank you. Thanks. That's all we have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Anyone here for the public that has comments, questions? Public portion's closed.
Chris, am I correct that you're going to consolidate two beachfront lots, but might require a
Consolidate
subdivision?
Lot 6 and Lot 8, and then subdivide off after that, subdivide off the portion of the Atlantic Avenue side.
Which you might be able to do through the committee. I haven't looked at it, but okay. Just so we're clear.
This will be a 100-foot lot,
It would all be by right, correct?
all by right.
Yeah. Anything else, or are we ready to frame a motion? All right, it's a C variance application for, I believe, 2 variances to allow the front yard setback and the fence. It's at 9.2 feet. And the curb cut width to allow the 30-foot curb cut where 18 is the permitted maximum. I'll note the conditions that they're going to provide the non-conversion agreement, which is going to be required anyway. They're going to consolidate lots 6 and 8. The tax assessor will assign the number. They'll have to do that prior to obtaining any building permits. And then that's also going to eventually require subdividing off, whether through the subdivision committee or else, or some, presumably, the Atlantic Avenue 50-foot lot. I didn't say that clearly, but I think everyone understands. And then the other conditions will be, we'll just note anything in Mr. McLaren's report unless otherwise addressed. excuse me, subject to any outside approvals, if any, and any representations made by the applicant during the course of the hearing will be followed.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Tom Collins?
You know, to quote a famous basketball player, what did Iverson say? We're talking about practice. We're talking about a fence,
I
a
don't need
driveway
those
that's.
stinking practice.
I'm testifying.
I'm saying Iverson said, I don't need those stinking practice.
Okay, whatever. But it's ridiculous. I mean, look at this house, look at the proposal, look at the property, look at the location. You're talking about a property that's not down in the middle of Amherst or, you know, in a street where it just can't substantiate it. The parking, I would much rather see him have 7 cars off the street, because I know on Atlantic Avenue, from Thursday to Tuesday, you can't park. They leave their cars and they pull them out of their driveways and they take those spaces so that people can park. I mean, we have a chance here to get a lot of cars off the street. You look at the design of the house, it's smaller, it's compact, it's got tons of air, light, and open space. I mean, look at this thing. It's magnificent. And it's not aesthetics, this is practicality. This gives the neighborhood the benefit of a better flow for everything. The bottom floor doesn't really mean anything. And the pool, it's back further than where it was. The driveways are almost what was existing. I mean, there's no reason, unless we're sitting here saying that nobody can get a curb cut variance because we made the rule. But when we did the curb cut variance, we said we're doing it, you were part of this, because too many cars were being lost on street parking. We're not losing any cars on street parking. So if people are predetermining their mind here, saying, oh, well, we can't give a driveway variance because it's bad, that's bad for this board. We need to be objective. And this is a very beautiful, high rateable for Margate, and the landscaping is just out of this world. I mean, I don't see how anybody could vote against this, but that's my opinion. I vote in favor.
Craig Palmisano?
Yes, it's a very beautiful project, but it is an empty lot. It's going to be an empty lot. And fences are a problem throughout the city. They have been and they are. And we don't need more people coming to this board asking for front yard fences. The 2 variances are very big. I'm very hard on them, the curb cuts and the front yard fences. 13 years ago was different when this house was, when the curb cut was allowed 13 years ago. I like to be consistent, and I'm always, I fought for the 18 to not have an 18-foot curb cut in some spots where I think it should be 10-foot. So a 30-foot is excessive. I think it's just too much. It was given to you 13 years ago, but today's different. After the Sandy storm is different, the parking is different. So with the fence that I'm against and the excessive curb cut, you could put 5 cars off the street right now with one 18-foot curb cut. You can get 5 cars off the street. And you have 5 bedrooms, 4 spaces are required. So to be consistent, I have to vote no on this one.
Richard Patterson?
So much has changed since 2007, extreme changes, as in Sandy, as in a totally new master plan, as in the city specifically arguing and going back and forth and discussing front yard fences for 2 years and coming up with, no, you can't have front yard fences. If there was no alternatives, I may say, well, okay, well, I can understand that. You have such easy alternatives to obtain the same quality, beauty, size, and everything on this house. It is simple. It's not simple because you've already drawn these plans, but plans could be drawn on an 18,000 or 8,000 square foot lot that would satisfy every need. And as far as and I don't mean this bad, but I'll say empty threats is a horrible way to say it. Well, if we don't get this approved, we're going to put 40-foot decks in, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I look at this as doing a special favor for one person when it affects everybody in all the beach blocks. There is nothing unique about this house. There is big, beautiful houses from one end of town to the other, and to say that this house should have any variances when there is alternatives that would not destroy anything on this house, I see no reason to grant a favorable variance for one person when it affects so many people in town. There is nothing unique about this property for these variances, and I vote no.
John Pitts?
Yeah, I agree with the majority of Rich's statements. I think with some relatively minor tweaks, the property could come in with no variances required. I vote no.
Michael Cristaldi?
Beautiful project. And I agree with the other board members of just a couple, as John just said, a couple tweaks of moving stuff around. They've got exactly what you need. I vote no.
Jim Galantino?
I don't think anybody heard the man say that if he gets turned down, he's going to renovate his existing structure, which means it's a non-compliant, now FEMA-regulated structure. Now we have to make him elevate the structure.
It's
So he's
called
got
an
dou-
empty threat.
It's a double double.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're voting.
It's a double hardship, Rich. Either you get a flood compliant property now, or you're going to non-flood compliant property. Look, 3 years ago, I got rung up on the fact that I did not make people elevate their properties. Now we were very strict on it, and we make everybody follow the rules. You have to do a flood development permit. You got to produce paperwork. It's insane, the amount of paperwork we do with these houses now. Just for that fact alone, I approve this application.
Margaret Gubernolti?
So I came in here after viewing the property and looking at the plan, saying 30-foot wide. Are you kidding me? There's no way. But I don't think we can just look at and be hard and fast on this is the rule and don't look at anything else. So I opened my mind and looked at this project, and I think it's a good project. I think that it is less dense. I think it fits on Rumson Avenue. I spent my entire life looking and selling real estate for 40 years in Margate. And I think it fits with the property. I think it's a beautiful project. I think the benefits outweigh the detriments. I think you can't park on the street anyway. We are taking cars off the street, so I don't think that makes a difference, and I vote in favor.
Remy Pelosi?
I vote in favor as well. These variances are de minimis, and I agree with the statement about the wider curb cut. It's a bigger property, and instead of having 3 monster homes that we could have, I think they're doing a beautiful job of preserving air, light, and space and not doing a 2.5-story home. And the fence, unlike some other fences we have approved, this one will be able to be a little more open air, and what's proposed is a beautiful project, and I have no issue with it. I approve it.
Michael Richmond?
Okay, so, as far as the curb cut goes, I think it's actually a benefit to the neighborhood because by putting more streets there, you're not gonna have people parking on Atlantic Avenue, taking up those spaces, parking 1 block up, taking up those spaces, so, I don't have a problem with that, but with the fence, again, it's a beautiful house, but there's 8,000 square feet. I mean, the pool, you were talking about the deck on the 2nd floor, just eliminate that deck. If you eliminate the deck, you can put, right? If you eliminate that deck on the 2nd floor, you can push the pool back. right? You have a giant amount of decking. I mean, you got more deck on this house than my house. You know, the second floor deck is huge. It's gigantic. I mean, I don't think it's gonna be a detriment to anybody to eliminate that deck there, that little deck. So, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to vote no.
The application is denied with 4 in favor and 5 opposed.
Do you have any other business?
Yep, make a motion, we close the meeting?
No. Do we have any other business? No. I do one thing, Tom. I asked you last meeting to bring up the openness under houses. Could you tell me what happened or what was brought up? Okay, so I think I heard right that we want to set up a subcommittee to look at it?
Yes. Should be discussed.
You want to be on the subcommittee? Sure. And I'll be on the subcommittee, and we want one more person. Anybody want to volunteer, or? Okay, and Mike. So we'll appoint that subcommittee, and what we're going to be looking at is, and again, Roger has provided pictures of houses in Ocean City that are not like Tom had proposed, putting up on pilings, houses that sway, but they can be done very well, and you've seen those pictures. And everybody swears to God that they are not going to use the bottoms, and everybody is using the bottoms. This is a way, first of all, if it's open, they'll actually use it to park their cars, because nobody parks in the garage, and it'll stop them from using living space down there. They can have a third or 40%, whatever we decide on, for storage. Everybody needs storage. It will be actually used as storage. So we want to discuss that. Now, if it's, how many are there? 3 of us? You, me, and Mike. So we're allowed to meet without a quorum, right?
Correct.
Okay. So
The
we'll,
only thing I got to say about that is, you know, again, we're, you know, everybody does the same, we don't know that. So what
you want
I
to go for a
think
ride
is.
with me?
Huh?
You want to go for a ride?
Sure, yeah.
Mr. Patterson, board members.
I think,
Mr. Patterson, board members. Excuse me, I'm so sorry for interrupting. We could come back and move the pool and ask for the curb cut, or we could do that tonight, while everybody's here.
We're done.
Why not that?
That's the board's,
well,
it's your
wait a minute.
discretion. I mean,
So,
What's the question?
We're still open, we haven't closed.
We will,
here's the issue. We took a vote.
I could ask for 2 votes.
but you didn't ask for it.
I know I did, I know.
So it's the board's discretion. You want to come back and vote on just the curb cut. The pool's a no.
And now the neighbors don't know that we're now going to vote on the
What neighbors?
curb cut again?
What neighbors?
The ones that within 200 feet that you have to notify. You don't have to notify?
Take a hand, and, well, a hand vote's not gonna do me any good. I get it, Rich, thanks. I just thought for the convenience and for the
Got it.
expedience, it would
Are
be.
you allowed to come back?
Come back
If,
Monday.
if he comes back for the curb cut, he can clearly come back for that.
Absolutely.
And,
Right.
But
and
then he has to do everything all over again.
Right.
He's asking if he could just do it, because if he's gonna eliminate the decks, move the pool back, change the fence
Yeah,
out.
I'll be fine with that too, but Leo, who's our legal
Can we
thing,
do
is
it?
saying it. Can
I
you do
think
it or not?
the board has the discretion. Look,
Once the vote's already been
I
taken?
would, yeah.
It's not so sacrosanct that the board can't just say, yeah, we'll do that. I mean, it's not,
if the
We
board
know
wants to look at it in a matter of convenience, the alternative is make him file a new application, send out new notices, come back where it seems he had 5 votes for the curb cut. But
So what are we gonna do?
I say, let's vote on it.
I mean,
I mean, as long as Leo says it's okay, I don't have a problem.
I think the board has to approve it. I'm not going to tell the board they should do it. Is that the
I
best way to
agree
do
with
it? To show of hands?
I say we vote again.
Roger, you need to take a look at what they're proposing.
One
More
variance,
depth
curb
than we're
cut.
gonna do
Curb
here
cut.
in 5 minutes.
Yes.
but the,
I have a pretty
but the
good
fence
idea
is a
what they're
performing
gonna do.
position is just a curb
I mean,
cut.
it's,
They're gonna get rid of the deck, move the pool.
The pool complies
We're
now.
gonna make the fence comply.
So,
Fence has to comply, make the fence
so
comply.
I have to review that anyway for compliance. If it doesn't pass, they come back here for that.
And it's a good
So the only
question.
thing they're asking for is the 30-foot wide curb cut.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a good question to, does Roger, the board, need to see the whole to see if that they still like the curb cut? Sounds like it's
He has to let him come back.
to let them,
Who wants to let them come back?
let them come back now.
Go now.
Now,
1, 2, 3, 4.
Five that voted,
Go ahead.
Right.
voted yes.
Do we need them here? Chris, you going to get them?
You're gonna vote no yes. So let's-
So what were you saying?
oh. Come on, you're asking too much of me. What I was saying was that,
Oh, underneath the house.
like underneath the house, I have no problem with it being open where well, I guess they.
Not the entire house.
I
They
know,
still
I
have
know,
room for
I
storage.
know.
At least one space. per
But
room.
like, the good thing about having a totally enclosed driveway, garage, whatever, underneath is security. So, nobody can bust into your car, which I know never happens in Margate.
They don't park in the garage.
All right,
Only on
yeah,
my
let me,
street.
I think going forward, I've been in towns, and we've done, this has happened a couple of times. You have 8 variances, they take a separate vote on every single one. To me, it's a little bit ridiculous, but oftentimes, we can be a little more mindful, and Chris has to speak up too, but this didn't seem like that circumstance. Sometimes when we had the third floor decks that weren't allowed, completely separate from 2 other variances, we would take a separate vote. And it comes out lots of times in the board's comments. This one seemed like there wasn't really a difference of opinion between the pool and the curb cut but Mike made it pretty clear on the one issue. His concern was the pool, so the fence. The fence, we're gonna deem, Chris,
Then make it comply.
was a no. We'll take a separate vote separately on the 30-foot curb cut,
Thank you.
which potentially could save you another trip back here that,
And we don't need to hear from you again, right? No. We're just gonna have another vote.
and you'll submit,
God, no.
and I'll put a condition.
It should be on the record
You'll-
that there's
you'll-
agreement to this.
You'll make the fence comply, you'll submit compliance plans to be, if approved, to be reviewed and approved by Mr.
Yes,
McLaren.
thank you, yes.
I think it's just, is it yea or nay?
Are you gonna redo another motion?
Motion to allow a 30-foot
I'll make that motion.
curb cut,
I'll
All right.
as where it's shown, I assume, correct?
You can say approve, I approve, or no, yeah.
Roll call motion.
Yes, same as
You don't necessarily have to go detailed into your reasons if you already, especially if you voted yes already.
Okay. Tom Collins,
I vote yes for the same reasons as before.
Craig Palmisano,
I vote no for the same reasons as before.
Richard Patterson,
I feel we're bending over backwards for one applicant where it would not apply to everybody else in the beach block. I think it's not the job of the board to do that. I absolutely vote no.
John Pitts,
Sorry. Yeah, we discussed some options on the ground floor of the house that would provide more parking under the house. So I vote no.
Michael Cristaldi,
After thinking about it, what Jim came up with, I've got to vote yes.
Jim Galantino,
I vote yes for the same reasons I stated as before.
Margaret Gubernalty,
I vote yes for the same reasons I voted before.
Remy Pelosi,
Wait, what did I vote before?
Yes.
Okay, still yes, still yes.
Michael Richmond.
Yeah, like I said before, I actually think it's a benefit to the neighborhood. Also, talking about parking underneath the house, yeah, theoretically that's an idea, but I think it's going to be a lot easier to go on the side and just have a couple underneath, so I'm going to vote yes.
The application is approved with 6 in favor and 3 opposed.
Thank you very much.
As it-
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Amendment.
All right, so we're gonna have that